Hello, chat. What's good? Welcome to our special Christmas slash solstice slash Yule show where we talk about why things get spooky at Christmas. First, I got Salty Dixie here with me. Don, the
Dale,
Flaccid
what's up?
Phoenix on the bottom.
Sorry.
He is the
Power bottom. Powering
Power
through
bottom.
this at the bottom. Look out.
8
Keep
seconds.
me there.
8 seconds.
yes, that's about how long he lasted. Let's bring in our special guest. We'll wait no longer for the man, the myth, legend, Kamran Pasha. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Zach, for having me on here. And I think we have the lovely Nicole joining us. I always like it when there is a female energy to balance. All these YouTube channels are always in a banana sausage fest thing, and so it's always a bore. And so we have a nice feminine energy here. And she's magical because she's a medium as well. But thank you. And you said before we came on that this was the best intro ever. And I have to say, this is the best intro of a channel I've ever seen ever. Incredible there. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Cameron. Why waste anyone's time, right? So get right to that. Yes, thank you, Cameron. And Nicole, Nicole Stroud from Through the Veil. She is a medium, a psychic. She does card readings and she investigates the paranormal. And she's very active with doing that. So thank you for coming, Nicole.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, let's go. We have Cameron. Right. We have Cameron for a limited time, so we're going to get right into it.
So I'm going to kick things off by giving you a history and a context of why we talk about ghost stories at Christmas time at Yuletide. Now, we're all familiar with Dickens' A Christmas Carol, but that is just the tip of the Yuletide spooky spear. And let me get this article pulled up. And I know how to do this. I really do. Hold on one second. I'm in which one am I in? All right, I can do this. All right, it's up already. Never mind, not my stream. So this one comes to us from Tor.com, and this is entitled Christmas Ghost Stories, How the Holidays Became Haunted. Now, back in 1891, Jerome wrote, whenever 5 or 6 English-speaking people meet around a fire on Christmas Eve, they start telling each other ghost stories. Now, I wasn't aware of this. I was familiar with, obviously, with Dickens, but all throughout December and January in England, and with stories overflowing on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, it was nothing but ghost stories. Now, when did all of this start? It goes back to the 17th century, but this is fascinating. Now, those of you who know Washington Irving know that he wrote several pretty darn amazing spooky stories, but in addition, he wrote something in 1819 called The Sketchbook. Now, this was a series of essays praising traditional customs, parodying modern manners, and then featured a long series of Christmas essays describing vast country feasts that end with ghost stories around a fire. Now, the sketchbook goes into those details, but the highlight of that is the one and only The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which was an incredibly popular tale to tell at Christmas. Now, we can go into ad nauseum detail on this, but what it really comes down to is that Christmas was a time for spooky tales around a Christmas fire. And there were generally 2 types of those, but we can get into that later in the show. I just wanted to provide people a context for this who may have not been aware. So there you go.
That's great. Well, that is wonderful context. I mean, I don't think I knew all those details, but yeah, I want us to say Washington Irving is very special, not just for the things he's known for, but he also wrote this sort of anthology of works called the Alhambra, right? And which is the palace in Moorish Spain, and I have a TV series I've developed on Moorish Spain, which the Alhambra is at the center of it. And I went to visit the Alhambra, and they actually have the rooms where he wrote the book. Are designated with plaques where he was just sleeping in the palace and writing this incredible book in the 1800s, right?
I was there this year, Cameron, in that room too. Beautiful. I loved it.
The Alhambra is magical. I mean, it's literally another dimension. And we're talking about other dimensional stuff today. So
I know. Well, you can just Vend me $50 for that, Cameron. We don't need to tell people we set that up before the show, so you're welcome. There you go.
I'll pay you Tuesday for hamburger today. How's that? Is that good?
I'll take the hamburger now, thanks. But go ahead, yeah.
So for me, what I wanted to do the show this week this way was last week we did Christmas stories. People came on, told their Christmas stories. It was a fun show. But I fell down a rabbit hole as to why do we do these things at this time of year, aside from the religious aspect of it, and does it go back further? And of course, it goes back so far that I lost time researching this stuff.
Really?
And so It really, and today is the solstice, the day of the show, so it's perfect. And so I have great guests, and let's talk about the thinning of the veil and of the solstice of the connection between life and death, and why that time is special. Cameron, have you experienced anything around Christmas?
Well, it's interesting because you mentioned the solstice. So today I live in Santa Monica. The sun is set, so you can't see it out there. But I live right by Palisades Park, which is right by the ocean here in Santa Monica. And there's a sculpture there. And there was a sculpture. I mean, I thought it was a nice, interesting, weird sort of metal, cool, modern art sculpture that I never paid attention to. It was just there in the park as a central thing. And then last year, I happened to be walking out during the solstice time, and I saw this huge crowd gathered around it. And I learned that sculpture was put there as a marker for the solstice, just like the pyramids or Stonehenge, right? A modern day effort of aligning architecture with the cardinal points with the solstice. And so I went out there again, and what happens is on the solstice at sunset, it shines right through this central hole in the oval, right? And it's very beautiful and lights up the whole park, right? So just like our ancestors would do that with all these great megalithic monuments, they oriented it towards the solstice. This is there. So I just saw that today, but that's the whole thing, is that there is something sacred about the solstice. There's the sense of an ending of a cycle of time, right? That we measure through the sun, right? I come from the Islamic tradition, and there's a verse in the Quran that references God as the Lord of the two Easts and the Lord of the two Wests. And that's a direct reference to how the sun goes to these extremes during the summer and winter solstice, right? It sets at extremes of the sky. So there's two easts and two wests, and there's something magical and mystical about that.
Yeah, that's something that goes back as far back as you can go in history, and we're still following those traditions, even if we don't always realize it, because we've had this sort of veneer of what the season should mean for people, and it's being sold to us a certain way. But beneath that, there's so much history, and there's so much to learn, and there's what's actually going on.
And there's so much ancient architecture that I think has been misdated. And probably some sites that have built on sites that were much, much older, let's be honest about it. And throughout cultures separated by thousands of miles, it was all about astronomy and advanced astronomy, especially where the solstices were critical to the building and construction and orientation of these buildings within like a 0.00 accuracy of a slot somewhere. They were going over a cave. I forget where. I think it was in Ireland, and they just found this one thing where the solstice was this little speck, and they thought it was something else. And then what is it? Cameron, what's the site out there that I believe it's the abandoned Native American site, Chatka or whatever it might be?
You're not talking about the Snake Hollow, right? You're not talking about the snake carving?
No, I'm not talking, because that's the Ohio Valley. But there's another one in the American Southwest where a photographer was walking on a hill outside of an abandoned Native American site, and someone had carved a spiral on a rock behind another rock, and that rock was there to filter the sun through a narrow slit to hit exactly in a spiral.
Wow.
And these are cultures, these are Native American cultures that we're still finding these things out, and it always comes back to astronomy, and in particular the solstices.
Well, I will share something that it's connected, to the idea of the sun as being, something that's mystical and just its orientation. So, since we're talking about paranormal things, the first and only ever UFO experience that I've personally had was during the solar eclipse in 2019 in Chile. I went down with an eclipse tour down to Chile, and we went out to the Atacama Desert of Chile, and there the eclipse was going to happen right over it. And I'd never seen a solar eclipse with my own eyes, and it is in and of itself incredibly magical. It's life-changing when you see it, right? You're like, I can't believe I'm actually seeing this thing. It has a profound effect on your body, right? Just watching it, the reaction to it. But what happened is after the eclipse, I and several other members of the group saw this incredibly bright light in the sky that was not a helicopter, it was not a plane, it was not a drone, it was completely silent, and it was hovering over us about 100 feet, and it was just one solid color. First, it was solid red, not flashing like, you have to have any aeronautical vehicle has to have flashing lights to differentiate it from stars, and this was just a bright, solid globe in the sky, bright red, and then it suddenly was bright green, and it stayed bright green for 2 minutes, turned back to bright red, and then moved across the sky in this sort of parabolic arc that's really not possible for aircraft, and started plunging towards the earth. And before it hit the earth, it just vanished, and no sound the whole time. And I was just in awe of what I'd seen here. I mean, I'd never seen anything like it. And I was with one of the people that witnessed this with me was a professional pilot. The guy standing next to me was like, I fly planes for a living. I've never seen anything like that. That's not anything I've ever seen, and it's beyond our understanding what we just witnessed. And those of you who may know, the Atacama Desert is famous. It's probably it has the highest concentration of UFO sightings in the world, to the point the Chilean government has an X-Files division that they investigate.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the reason I bring that up with the eclipse and with solstice is that I have a spiritual, Sufis are the Islamic mystics, and I have a Sufi teacher, right? So I in West Africa, and I called him up and said, I think I saw a UFO. What was this phenomenon, right? And he said to me, during eclipses, interdimensional doorways open. And so what we would call the jinn, these invisible beings, you can call them aliens, whatever you want to call them, but these other dimensional entities enter into our world during phenomenon like that. And I have an instinctive belief that they must also enter, these doorways must open, because you talk about the spiral, they must open during the solstices as well, because it's a connection of the sun with the magnetic field of the earth and the tilt of the earth. It's got to have some kind of effect that opens these doorways. So that's one of the reasons I think that we have an occultic energy around the solstice. And the very fact that, to bring you back to talk what you said here about horror, paranormal, ghost stories, what's unique about the winter solstice is, of course, it's the shortest day of light of the year. And then, there's a reason people say December, there's a reason that Christmas, is celebrated December 25th and not on December 22nd, because there's about a 3-day period where the sun is still sort of in this, dormant phase from the solstice, and then it starts moving back, right? And that starts on the 25th. And so it's not a surprise that in Christian tradition that, the resurrected sun, the sun starts moving again. It's also the date of the birth of Christ in the Christian tradition, right? And also in many other mystical traditions, Mithras and all this, December 25th, the Romans, all of them had something powerful, divine taking place during the 3 days of the solstice effect. So
yeah, in Saturnalia, going back to pre-Roman times, the same thing, and the symbol of the evergreen tree, which comes from that. Again, I mean, I think, and I talk about it on Phenomenal, that a lot of these traditions were handed down orally from civilizations that existed long before even things that we understand. I really do believe that.
I believe that.
I mean, look at Graham Hancock and look at Randall Carlson. I mean, now he obviously has the network special, which is really cool. But just reading his books, I mean, everyone should make up their own minds, read the evidence. But to me, what we're looking at was a reboot of our species, going back to what happened 11,000, 12,000 years ago. And a lot of these oral traditions, man, I don't know where a lot of this advanced knowledge came from, but they sure thought the astronomy was important to pass down. It really, really was.
So I want to ask our friend Nicole here, who's a medium, to get a perspective from your point of view about the meaning of this time period, and whether there's another point of view beyond just the astronomical thing. Is there something related to this interdimensional phenomenon that I'm talking about?
Well,
Try to put you on the spot.
yeah, no, it's okay. The way that I see it, and the veil getting really thin, it always, thins out around, Halloween, October, that time of the year. And it does thin out all the way through. And we think it as the time of when, Persephone has to go back to Hades.
Sure.
She will return in the spring. But yeah, that veil is going to continue to be thin up into that time for sure.
Yeah, and it makes sense. And at this point, it's literally the deepest descent into Hades at the shortest day of light, right?
Yeah.
So it makes sense. So one question I have is,
or dog problems.
One question I have is, do we know of any vampire traditions linked to? We know ghost stories. Do we know any vampire traditions that are linked to the solstices? Does that come to mind at all? I obviously don't know. That's what I'm asking.
I didn't bring up any in my book that I know of.
What I do know is that because it's the closest period of time between, it's the shortest day of the year, and it's the closest time between life and death for people. And they used to, and in pagan times, they would celebrate this as a time of year to be closest to their loved ones and their ancestors, because they would, to the afterlife, it was something that was looked forward to and celebrated then it got pushed back till October, and it's become more of a horror time and more of a spooky time, and not so much to be celebrated and looked forward to. And that's been a change over the last few hundred years, really, since Victorian England, which is why we still have things like Ghosts and A Christmas Carol. Those things all still link over, and they're still in our current culture, but it's been sort of twisted a little bit and turned somewhat, so we don't see what it used to be.
Right. They tame it down.
I'm sorry?
They tame it down.
Sure. Well, because I think European culture in general, and this is specific to the European history, just because the historical prevalence of how the church handled a lot of the pre-existing nature religions, right? I think it led to, let's just say, a suppression of a lot of these ideas. In the Islamic world, one of the things that we did is that with the Sufi mystics, we were able to incorporate a lot of pre-Islamic wisdom into the mystics. Just brought all those guys in, right? And so all their legends, their stories, their knowledge, their mathematics, their Pythagorean stuff, all that stuff was brought into Sufism and incorporated into mystical Islam. And so there was a way to continue to have those nature wisdom traditions within the rise of this monotheistic culture, because it had an avenue to absorb them in a way rather than try to suppress them. And as a result, you've got if you go to Iran today, for example, I think you still have Nowruz. The spring equinox is still the beginning of the new year, right? And so even today in modern Islamic Iran, it's a pre-Islamic Zoroastrian tradition that is still the beginning of the year and the major celebration there. But I want to bring up the reason I brought up vampires. There's a reason, because you mentioned, Nicole, you're a card reader, right? So it just occurred to me as you're talking, maybe someone needs to write a nice horror story about an Anne Rice type vampire novel about vampires having fun on the longest day, because you think this is their longest night, right, where they can be out and party, right? Because it's not going to get better than this on solstice night, right?
I did look on Google, and there might be a trash tier self-published book that somebody did, but
there's a movie out there.
There's a lot of that, but that does not mean, Cameron, that it can't be done better and then made into a trilogy. I'm just saying, and the vampires won't sparkle.
Well, so this is, I collect tarot decks. This is my absolute favorite one. This is Tarot of the Eternal Night, which is a vampire tarot.
Oh, let's get this. Yeah,
I'm going to take out some of these cards. They're absolutely incredible. It's some of the most beautiful designs I have ever seen. And apparently it's hard to get this deck now. I don't know why. I mean, I think this should be a bestseller, but it's apparently kind of rare. So let me show you some of these cards. So here's the Fool, right? Look at that.
Wow. Okay, that's amazing.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, you got the Emperor, right?
And so, what's the deck called, Cameron?
It's called the Tarot of the Eternal Night.
Ooh, that's cool.
Here you've got like the Priestess, right?
Yeah,
okay, they're all vampires, right? So there's so many of them, but here's one of my favorites, the Lovers.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's just
awesome.
And we have the Sun. The Sun is one of my favorites. Okay, so let me see if I can get that here. Here we go. All right. I'll find it. Okay. Well, here's the Tower. The Tower is all the vampires flying around the tower, and then here we go. This is one of my favorites. The Sun card.
Oh.
Wow,
that's amazing.
I mean, if you have a chance, get this. I mean, I think the deck might still be available on Amazon, but there's this incredible whole set with a beautiful picture book with the history of this stuff that is just impossible to find. So I'm glad I've got this thing.
Yeah, that stuff like all physical media right now. If you can find it, you should probably pick up a copy of it, no matter what it is, and that especially. That's
that's pretty awesome.
It is interesting because there's been some remarkable events that have occurred on the solstice, or where they timed to happen on the solstice. Check this out. Mm-hmm. Guess when in 1620 the Pilgrims arrived in Plymouth? It was on the winter solstice. In 1898, Marie Curie discovered radium on the winter solstice. In 1968, the Apollo 8 launched and became the first manned space moon mission, and that occurred on the solstice. Is
And I have to be
that
honest,
weird?
the Apollo 8 mission, I'm a huge fan of the Apollo missions. I'm going to go with the presumption that they actually happened, that we went to the moon. I'm just going to go with that
Yeah.
presumption. Right?
Some of them.
Oh,
I'm wrong. I'm wrong. Right now, I'm going to go with that presumption. And so, for me, Apollo 8 is actually the most crazy and dangerous of all of them because human beings had never left Earth orbit ever, right? Yeah. And they had no idea if they couldn't even survive getting past the radiation belt outside of the Earth's orbit, right? And then they're like, what if we slightly miscalculate the moon? We're just going to keep going. We're just going until we get a deep space, we're going to die, right? And, you know, and then that moment when they go behind the moon and completely lose contact with Earth, everyone's like, are they dead? Are they alive? I don't know. And then they come out, hear their first radio thing. And you can watch on YouTube the they did the famous Christmas, because by the time they got to the moon, it was Christmas. And they do this. They did they showed like the first ever images from like a human being holding a camcorder looking down at the moon from a window, right? From, 100 miles above the surface. And you're looking at this and they read the first lines of Genesis, right? It's an incredibly moving thing where they did this live thing of first human beings to actually see the moon with their own eyes from above it, right? And they read the first lines and God created light, and it really, it's one of the most amazing, Apollo 11 is incredible, but it would not have been possible without Apollo 8 because that's the most insane thing human beings ever thought of doing. We can actually get to the moon. Landing on the moon is getting to it.
Yeah. Getting around the back of it and nobody knowing what was going to happen. And people forget that. People really do.
Yeah.
So Nicole, you have some experiences that you've with paranormal around Christmas. Would you mind sharing one or two of those with the group? I think they're pretty cool.
Yeah, I will share the one that I shared with you. I'm gonna guess I was about 8 or 9 because I was still living, in Upper Illinois, and we'd always, it was a big Christmas tradition to travel down to my grandmother's house and have big holidays. And like I said, mind you, this house was first a depot in 1854, I do believe. It went to a doctor's office. It was a funeral home.
Wow.
It went back to a doctor's office. We always called it the big white house. We always went to grandma's. And we were getting ready to set up for dinner. And, I was looking around at the chairs and I knew how many people were there. I know my aunts and uncles, everybody's going to show up. Nobody extra is probably going to be there. And I looked at my grandma and I was like, we don't have enough chairs. And she's like, well, the kids are going to be in the kids' room, in the little dining room, which was actually the funeral parlor. But that's where we all ate. And she's like, we don't need any next chairs. I said, yeah, we do, because Bernice is here. I said, Jim is here, and George is here. And mind you, these are people that have been gone 40, 50 years before me. I never knew these people. And, she first kind of brushed it off. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. She said, just go get your stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Can I ask you a quick question? How old were you when that happened? Because I'm always curious of the age when those things present themselves.
I started seeing them when I was like 5.
Yep. That's when I saw my first thing too. It's crazy.
You guys see them as holograms? Can you distinguish that this is not a living being, or do you see them like it's another dude? Oh wait, you guys can't see that dude? Okay.
I see them as well as I see you or anybody else. They're just a little more opaque to me.
Okay.
And
so
they
you have a trigger that says they're not living. You have something that indicates it to you.
Mm-hmm. Except there's been a couple people that have walked out in the middle of the street and I've slammed on the brakes and almost threw everybody in the car through the windshield. And they're like, what'd you stop for? And I'm like, you just didn't see that lady walk in front of my truck. And they're like, no. Okay.
For me, it was more like a milky type of a plasma that had some type of force behind it. And, it hasn't happened very often, but I remember mine happened when I was 5 and it threw me across the room, and
yeah, I remember that story.
I mean, like
across the room. It actually
it actually something pushed me and it threw me onto the bed, and there was nobody in the house. Like, I'm not suppressing something. I was alone, and the crucifix was vibrating on the wall, and just whole thing. And it's but I don't want to steal your thunder. I just find it fascinating when these things present. At what age? So thanks.
It sounded like you didn't get a good start with that entity.
Things got worse from there. But yeah.
Well, it's interesting to talk about youth. I don't claim to be a medium or anything like that. The women in my family definitely see things. My niece clearly sees us that I've known. But and it's actually my Sufi master said it's the lineage of the women in my family. My great grandmother had been a Sufi healer in India who worked a lot with jinn, with spirits, right, to heal people. And so a lot of that energy came into the female lineage of my family. But I got a little bit of it, right? And so the one time that I ever clearly saw an apparition that wasn't just a shadow or something like that. I've seen a couple of those in my life, right? And they were scary. But the one time that I saw an apparition, the way you're describing that it was a person in the room that I didn't know was not there, was I must have been 13 years old. I was in junior high school, and it was one of those days where like my junior high had like a half day for some reason. It was like a holiday, whatever it was. And so I got home early, and my sisters, I have an older sister, a younger sister. My parents are working. My sisters are both in school. They didn't have a half day, so no one should have been home, right? And so I walk in, and I come in at like 12 o'clock early, and we have a very small apartment in Brooklyn. It's just basically, it's like a T-shape. You enter in through the main door. There's a living room right in front of you, and to the left, there's like the big bedroom that we all shared, all five of us, right? Immigrants, right? And then to the right is the one bathroom that we all shared, right? And so come in, and I see a child standing there in the middle of the living room. The first thing I see as I open the door, there's a child standing there in the living room, and with its back to me. And I assumed it was my little sister because it had black hair. I can still remember vividly, very short black hair. My sister at the time had short black hair, and it was wearing what looked like sort of loose sort of robe clothing that we wear in Pakistan, like the shalwar kameez. It looked like that. It wasn't that, but it looked like the kind of thing that my sisters might wear at home. And so my sister is like, at the time 8 years old, whatever, and I'm 13. I walk in, and the child is just standing there in the middle of the room, and I think it's my little sister. I'm like, 8 years old. Why is she home alone? My parents aren't here? I mean, I'm like, that's crazy. So I call. I mean, we were latchkey kids, but even then, we didn't try to leave an 8-year-old kid right by herself, right? So I called to my sister. I was like, hey, why are you doing here? Where's mom and dad? Are you here alone? I call out to the child. It's standing perfectly still, and then when it hears my voice, it starts running. It runs straight down just in front of me on the living room, and then turns right into the bathroom that we got, and just runs into the bathroom. So I'm calling my sister. What are you doing? Why are you being so weird? So, and it's a little teeny little apartment, maybe like 400 square feet, maybe that, right? So I chase after. I was like, why are you being so strange? I run after her, go into the bathroom. Nobody's there.
Right.
And it wasn't like out of this corner of my eye. It wasn't like a brief thing. This lasted, a good 10, 15 seconds of interaction of looking straight onto a person that I thought was physically there. And I thought was my sister. And I was like, and I remember my heart just stopping. It's like, what did I just see? Yeah. And so when my parents came home later, I told them all, they're like, oh, I'm sure you imagined it, whatever, So a few years ago, now that we're all much older, my little sister said to me, I was like, oh, I never told you at the time because I knew it would freak you out, but I saw the little kid too. And it was the same thing. She said, I would look up, I'd be doing my homework in the bedroom, and I would look up and it would run in from the living room and turn to the bathroom and disappear. Right. So it may have been a residual kind of thing. It was just repeating the same action. But she said she saw it. And I'm now looking back, as I remember, the clothing wasn't Pakistani shalwar kameez. It was actually closer to Native American, dress, right? Native American sort of like clothing.
Oh, okay.
This might have been this is Brooklyn, so they were native. They were obviously, we stole it from the natives. All of them in New York, we stole it from the natives, right? Give them a couple of beads and say, get off So they were native tribes there in Brooklyn, and this might have been a remnant of that.
That's a cool story. Yeah. I've only ever had the experiences where I've never had a full-on vision of something. And I don't know if it's because as a child, I remember seeing things, but as you get older, all I've ever been able to see is you just see things out of the corner of your eye. And I've never been able to focus on what it is that might be there that I've been able to see. So I'm jealous kind of people who've been able to experience something that they've actually seen. And Nicole, you see it all the time. So, I wonder if it's something we forget how to see or can learn how to see over time, because children seem to be able to see them more often than adults.
Mhm. I think it is with children. Um, Whenever, children start to get older and that childlike wonder disappears, they kinda lose that innocence to see. And I often wonder, does that happen to people? And then whenever they get older and they do start seeing spirits again, okay, has something, really happened in their life that puts them back in that state of childlike wonder, and then they start visioning again? Do they close it off to be adults? It's not how we're supposed to act. No, you don't have an invisible friend. You get a lot of that. An invisible friend could very well be a spirit that they're talking to.
Well, part of it, I think, because I do believe all this phenomenon, all of it is interdimensional. I believe the afterlife is
too.
another dimension, right? I think Bigfoot is a creature from another dimension. The UFOs are. It's all in because they're layers of dimensions. Our five senses only access one layer of it, right?
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
So what it is how do you access layers of dimensions? It's consciousness, right? And so children have a very innocent, early developed consciousness, which is still connected to their origin of life from which they originated, right? The energy field in which they were conceived and born. And I think as we grow older, to just function in the dimension we have to primarily work in, our brain gets to a place where, people say that a child is still in the dream world until the age of 7, and then they start sort of waking up to our material world. So, because, basically you see the brain essentially, you're closing down that level of access, because I don't think the brain creates consciousness. The brain accesses consciousness. It's like a radio receiver, right? And so it's
Correct,
just
yeah.
that channel gets shut off, right? And that can probably happen faster if you're in an environment where people tell you don't have an imaginary friend. Santa Claus isn't real, right? And then that accelerates the shutting down of that channel.
I think what happens, and I talked about it on a phenomenal show, is that I know there have been numerous brain studies where they talk about the amount of synapses that we don't actually use and the amount of brain capacity that we don't actually use. And something that I postulated was that, remember that great event where our species almost went into extinction and all of the major land mammals in North America all died off? I think something happened on a global scale where we had to almost devolve as a species, and we may have been in a higher state of consciousness akin to what we have now. But what if we were using other senses than the five senses? What if the other parts of our brain had been more attuned to other things? There's no reason to think that human beings could not have evolved or pushed those powers a little bit more. So, what if we have those among us who are throwbacks, who have those capacities that are out there? And as children, like you mentioned, from the age 3 to 5 developmentally, they're still pliable enough to be able to access some of that, maybe at a low power mode. But once you have to focus and become analytical and fall into the linear thinking ways that we are now, where we're limited to our five senses, like Cameron said, I do believe there are parts of our brain which calcify or which shut off because they revert back to that survival mode, low level reptilian brain that we as humans needed. But I think that we've kind of started to outgrow. And I think that's why certain people see things like energy, like you're talking about, Cameron. And I've even experienced with seeing UFOs because I've been on a boat with people and only I saw it. And I took a picture of the damn thing and nobody saw what I took a picture. I mean, like, I don't understand. Like what the hell is happening here? I'm not crazy. It's on the picture, it's on my camera and nobody else could see it. So I don't know what that's about. I really don't know what that's
very
about.
common phenomenon where people say, I saw the UFO and then nobody else around me could see it was right there. I mean, why couldn't they see it? Right? Actually, you brought up the thing I want to raise 2 points on it. And forgive me, Nicole, if I've interrupted you. I think you were supposed to say something. I just got very excited. So I just want to say this.
Dude, go.
Yes,
So
please.
you brought up one thing that I want to reference is an incredible book people should read. And then you inspired me to rethink a biblical story now. So the book that I think people should read is called The Goddess versus the Alphabet. Right. It's a really fascinating book. It's by it's by, let me get the author's name, Leonard Schlein, who is, I think, an anthropologist. And so Schlein analyzes basically how the brain essentially rewired when we became literate as a species. Right. And his argument is that as literacy spread, essentially we went from childlike sense of wonder to the cosmos to this more analytical thing, which altered our social behavior, it altered our legal structure, it altered all these things. And in his book, he actually talks about the liminal moment when that's about to happen is actually the rise of Islam, because the Prophet Muhammad is illiterate, and yet he leaves behind this incredible literary tradition and a culture that advances science, right? So that's the moment, he says, that's the break where the Prophet Muhammad represents the last line of that primordial cultural thing where we are connected to another world. And then by the development of widespread literacy, because even in the Byzantine Christian world, literacy still wasn't widespread. It was still the monks had it, right? It wasn't, whereas Islamic culture, widespread, we invented paper, literacy became central to, because everyone had to read the Quran, and it became widespread centralization, which altered how the brain was reacting to things. So that book is an incredible book just to look at the anthropology of the brain and how literacy changes. So we think about children are entering into first grade, second grade. That's about when that channel is getting shut off, is they're learning ABCD, right? They're learning to read and write, which they have to survive in our civilization. And that's when the brain starts rewiring away from that magical, mystical side. So the thing you inspired me with what you just said is, I think you helped explain the real meaning of the Tower of Babel, the story in the Bible, where
I want to talk about that more on a show, because that is freaking what analogy that's for. I think we don't quite understand yet.
Well, this is the analogy. I'm going to tell you the analogy that I think you actually solved, which is that the story, the myth, the story. And when I say myth, I'm not saying it didn't happen. So anyone who's a devout Christian or Jew is like, I'm not questioning the story. I'm saying the meaning of it, the mythological meaning of it, is that human beings prior to the event of the Tower of Babel could communicate with each other, and then they couldn't afterwards. So what if it's psychic communication?
I agree.
If that gets shut off, we're forced to use language, and then we can't, because, I don't think historically it's very difficult to claim that we all had one language, at least within the historical record. Maybe in the days of Atlantis we did, but within the historical record we have, it's hard to claim that, because it's not clear that that's no evidence that that's true. But if we were all connected psychically and could communicate with our minds, language was a secondary thing. Once that gets shut off, all we've got is it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The other thing that goes with this is how important the oral tradition was. Not everyone in the tribe, and it doesn't matter if it's Native American or within ancient Egypt, in some of the monks that they had then, it was a select few that could take in volumes and volumes of verbatim oral history and then be able to retain that and then repeat that, because that is how the message was spread. Now, when I memorized things, like when I did acting and other stuff, the emotionality that you attach to words was how I imprinted that in my brain. You have to kind of create these things. You don't just store it like like random access on a disk. To accommodate that much information and repeat it verbatim, there has to be another imprint than merely just the linear and the logical. Mm-hmm. So that's, I don't know. See, this is getting a little weird and esoteric, but dude, I think
topic is
that's what this is. That's what it is, though.
You know what I mean? But it's like
Christmas
this is
ghosts.
the fascinating, crazy stuff, right? I mean, like, there is so much more to us. There is so much more to us in our brain capacity. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you were talking about that, Cameron, what I thought was, what if kids with ADD and HD, what if that's part of our brain skipping, because we don't need this? Like, we've got a different skill set, and it doesn't need to be medicated. It needs to be accentuated.
Well, historically, there's a great book that looks at what we're doing right now with chemically, essentially mentally castrating our children, right? With these diagnoses.
Well, we are.
And it's a book called the Da Vinci Gene. I believe that's what it's called. I'll look up the title, but it's called the Da Vinci Gene. But it's basically looking at how they've essentially identified a gene for genius called the DHD4 polymorphic gene, and it is a gene that essentially stays dormant. It doesn't activate unless there's extreme emotional stress or pressure that causes it to activate, at which point it rewires the brain to genius, and then it can't be shut off. And so they talked about in the book that historically, people that the brain, it would get activated, were an immediate threat to the state. So they'd be labeled as witches, be labeled as this, set them on fire, hang them, right? Because they were
spot on.
And so now we meditate.
It's interesting, Cameron, because that's the same type of trauma that can cause narcissistic injury to the brain, and it could be the malignant narcissism or codependence. So think about that one. How does codependence and or narcissism fit into let's say a misfiring gene of that type? I don't know. See, this is where we start talking about brain chemistry, and I don't know. This is all fascinating stuff.
Let's get back to magic.
All right, let's talk about ghosts. I'm sorry.
Cameron, you do ghost hunting
better than the science does. Yes. It frankly does.
I was about to give him a weird one, but we'll leave it alone.
No, weird one. Go,
Ooh,
Nicole.
Give
please.
me a weird one.
Weird.
Well, no, people use on around about, 8% of their brain. And I've worked with psych patients. Okay. If you're using more than 8% of your brain, let's say they're using 15% of their brain or higher, and they're picking at bugs, and people are like, they're not seeing anything. What if they are seeing things that you can't logically see because you're not using as much capacity as they are? They're not insane.
Absolutely.
Well, and then we medicate them to the point where they can't see those things anymore. And it's so, are we actually dulling their senses by doing so?
Mhm.
In some cases, there's probably people who are seeing things that aren't there. I would bet, but
Look, Jesus said it in the Gospels. He said, a prophet is never accepted in their hometown. That's what it's alluding to. Whenever somebody shows up who is a visionary, literally a visionary, right? It's the immediate environment that's threatened. Others will accept them, but the immediate environment views a person as a problem to the structure that is known, and they try to quash them.
So, Cameron, you've done some ghost hunting and some exploring in that area. Have you had any experiences when you've been off on those tours, or would you mind sharing?
Sure. I mean, I've been sort of an informal amateur paranormal investigator for over 10 years. I've always been fascinated by this, obviously you can tell. But I started hanging out, remember those guys who started the ghost hunters, right? The plumber guys. So they actually, like 10, 15 years ago, wisely, economically, they decided, we can cash in on this fame of our show. And they set up like a tour company where they would be, or they were involved. I don't know if they set it up themselves, but they were involved in like ghost tours where you can go hang out with, Jason and Grant and go to these places. And I was like, oh my God, I'm a fan of the show. And in those days I had some money. I was like, hey, I'll go spend a few $1,000 and go to Stanley Hotel and meet these guys. Right. And I did. And so I've been now probably on a dozen.
The Stanley Hotel.
Oh. Yeah. And the Stanley Hotel is it's the first one I went to. And it's such an obviously haunted place that even a non-believer gets shaken up there, right? Because you're down in the basement, there's the spirit of this child that will converse with you. And the basement is built into a mountainside. So one wall of the basement of the Stanley Hotel is the stone wall of the mountain face. And you will hear the child's voice coming out of the stone, and it converses with you. It's intelligent. It's not residual. You'll say hello, it'll call back hello, and it's a child's voice, and you will hear it auditorily. I've captured on my thing, but I've heard it with my own ears so loudly, and it's a little girl's voice. So that's where Stephen King wrote The Shining, the little girls, right? He has experienced that. And then the other place I go to regularly, I actually was just there a few weeks ago. I go every year to the Mount Washington Hotel in New Hampshire, which is an incredibly haunted place, and I've always had strange experiences there. And there's a room there called the Princess Room, which was the owner of the hotel married a European royalty. She was called the Princess, and in that room, it's a very strange room where you can do live sort of sessions with your recorder, EVP sessions, and you'll ask a question, and then you replay your recorder, and you will hear a woman's voice on the recorder answering the question. And last year, when I don't know, it's last year, it was before the pandemic, we did this thing, and someone pointed out that the princess was fluent in French because she married a French nobleman. And so I said, why don't anybody speak French? Somebody did. So I said, why don't we ask questions in French? So we started asking questions in French. So, so I don't speak French, but there was, someone speaking very lovely, sexy language of French. And then we would replay our recorders, and you would hear her responding in French on the EVP.
Wow.
And so it's a magical place. And so I've had lots of experiences.
I've never heard of that language switch before. That's amazing.
I've experienced something like that, where that same thing where I could hear a language I didn't understand, and then I spoke it just like that, what Cameron referred to. It's insane. And I still don't know what that was. And I don't talk about it on my own show, but I'm just, again, hearing other people have things that have happened to them like that. That is really trippy and weird. It's, because you talk about these things and you wonder if people think you're full of shit or you're just making stuff up. But like what we're talking about here, it appears to be a phenomenon. Like, how can you converse with someone fluently in a language that I didn't really pay attention to in one semester of college 30 years ago? Okay. Seriously.
Well, so we always have interpreters.
Yes. Well, but the thing is, I will say this about skeptics. When people don't actually believe something, they don't bother to even engage you with it. The people that go out of their way to mock you, to tease you, to retweet you, and are people that are longing to believe. Part of them still, the child within them remembers that, and they want to be convinced. And yet that rational mind, the literate mind, is fighting them. So you're watching their inner conflict play out. When you don't believe something, you don't fight it. You just don't care, right? When you fight it, it's because some part of you believes it, and you're fighting yourself.
And it's fear. It's fear-based because then you would lose your place in your fragile ego. I know that's judgmental and kind of addicting to say, but you know what? Maybe just allow people to say this is what happened. Allow them to present the evidence and not just be threatened by a difference of opinion. You know?
Well, what it is it's pain, because what it is when they're repeating, no, ha ha ha, you idiot, yeah, there's no voices, you're completely out of your mind. That's what was said to them when they said, "Mommy, I see my imaginary
Bingo.
friend."
Bingo.
Just repeat. It's a cycle.
It's shame. It's cycling shame. You're absolutely right.
Now, I've watched Nicole actually experience things through her channel. She has them on tape, and there was one that we'll try to get on later, but you actually were physically harmed.
Wow.
Yeah, I was thrown 8 feet. But they were talking about ghost children. We just got one. It's on our shorts. And we were just at this bridge, kind of just looking at it, never been there before. We're bringing out our equipment, see if we can get anything. And I'm just standing there using the dowsing rods. They're not working for me. And in a short, brief of a second, and there's no way that you can miss it, there is this little ghost child that runs between me and another investigator.
So you captured it on camera, because I just went to your channel. I see the video there. Yeah.
Yeah, it is captured. So that was amazing. I was like, yay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Would you mind if we shared it here?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
All you
Hail to everyone in chat. By the way, we've been averaging about 30 to 40 people. Please hit that thumbs up button if you haven't already.
Please hit the like, and this is not your everyday conversation.
No.
Getting a little woo woo, and I love it. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's a sophisticated conversation. It's not just I'm hopefully bringing something interesting to the that we have before. Yeah.
Here we go.
You found it, yeah.
And I do loop it at the end so you guys can catch it. Once you see it, at first you won't see it, but when I start looping it, you will see what we're talking about. This little kid, he's on a mission.
Thank you for sharing out 13 Spirits Paranormal. It's much appreciated.
You know how to bring that up? I'm totally technical. I got it. You got it. Okay.
This one?
No, that was a different spirit in a cemetery.
That's creepy anyway.
It's the one
ghost
right
kid
there.
runs.
Oh, the ghost kid. I've got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like.
See, he just runs right through there.
Wow. So it's in the lower quadrant. If you look at the lower last
by her legs. That's from the movement?
Yep, right in here.
He actually comes from the back. And
Yep.
I see.
Yep.
Well, wow.
Can I play the skeptic for one moment? Can you tell me what the air temperature was when you recorded this video? Just because I'd like to get a sense of what the atmospheric conditions were when this occurred.
In the 40s.
Okay. So breath would not haze up like that at 40 degrees. If this was 20 degrees below zero, you'd see something like that, but not at 40 degrees. So I'm trying to think of things that skeptics would say, Sorry, go ahead, Cameron.
Yeah, but breath moves up. I'm sorry, breath moves up. Just the nature of heat, right?
Exactly.
Heat rises. And this isn't rising. This is going laterally. And it's lower. It's by your feet. It would be going up.
Yeah, and he literally comes from, if you watch, it comes like from the very back and then moves across in front of my legs.
Mm-hmm.
You could see him approaching. So I thought it was a really cool catch.
That's amazing.
You can.
There's definitely something going on there.
My skepticism was to try and play what somebody would say looking at this video. Not that I feel that. I was just going for the low-hanging skeptic fruit. Yeah, no,
you have to be able to address them, right? You have to have people say, because you're going to have a critic, and if you don't have a response to a critic, the moment you hesitate, they immediately dismiss. You don't know the answer. I'm right? So you have to have the response prepared, and that's the only way we can do is by hearing the criticism.
I will put this one up here. That's the one you said you was going to play later.
Hmm.
Whenever I get hurt.
Oh yeah.
I'll give you a timeline where you can start watching that. I
Okay.
think it's right about in there. Yeah.
This is remarkable watching the chat. There were people who were there when this event was recorded that we just watched, and it was more than one. And we're hearing and seeing the same things. And again, understanding the atmospherics of this, it's fascinating because it's not very often you get some pretty reasonable high definition video proof of any type of phenomena. It's really not.
Did you see this with your own eyes, or did you only see it when you reviewed the footage?
I only seen it when I was seeing the footage.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Which adds to it. If it had been breath, someone would have seen. If it had been mist, someone would have seen and noted it, right? You know, if you're in a spooky place, you notice the mist, right? Ooh, you know, and the fact that no one did, you know, there seems to be this phenomenon that the way our modern cameras are able to catch parts of spectrum that our eyes can't see.
Right.
Yeah. EMF, the electromagnetic frequency. There's only so much we can see with our types of eyes. In some of these devices, because they're digital, they're going to pick up much different things.
Is this a good spot, Nicole?
Changing.
Yeah, I changed batteries, and then I'm setting up the K2.
All right, who's throwing stuff?
Somebody throws something at me, but you'll see here in just it takes a few moments, but I actually do get thrown. And this is in a Civil War battlefield retreating flank line. We've been, over this area quite a bit, and I was just, went out there alone and thought I would take a
come
look.
up here and say hello. Where's that weird smell again? Rupert, are you out here anywhere?
Rupert is the guy that carries the body cart.
I don't feel comfortable. Don't feel comfortable. Don't feel comfortable. Let's go a little further down. There's my ears. Hello?
This is where I go home.
Do you guard the edge of this wood line? Where's my ears, guys?
Yeah, I have what they call a psychic sniff. If energies get too high, I sniff.
Okay.
Some tools. All right, so my ears are going off. Let's test this. Hello? Give me a moment. So we are still at 0, 0.
0, 0 what, Nicole?
That is on the radiation meter.
Are you right here with me?
Okay.
See if there's any.
My ears are going off and I can't see you.
So who's to your right? Who's saying that? Is that the spirit?
I didn't bring a room
Uh-huh.
or anything.
Yeah, I am out there alone. So there is someone speaking out there.
Did you didn't hear this auditorily when you were there?
Yes, I could hear them.
Oh, you did hear them. Okay. Because I could hear those voices. Yeah.
I had this going a while ago.
There's the K2. I was trying everything to see if we was getting a hit.
Hello? I just got a grrr, and it wasn't me. I ate. All right, let me find a place to set this K2.
So, as the reason I have to start it here is in reference to where I set the K2. Whenever I do get tackled,
I am by myself, so my hands.
and you'll see I'm standing right next to the K2 when it happens.
Right, so there's the K2.
So there's no way that
Can you come up here that box and light it up for me?
It's real light sand.
There's not snow on the ground there.
Mm-mm,
Yeah, I
it's
can't
sand.
touch it, but maybe you can. Hello?
You can hear your nose.
Yeah, sniff, sniff.
It's like Sunset Boulevard.
It's like I know they're close. I can't see them because it's dark. You don't see people in the dark.
Can you come light this box? K2 is not going off. I hear a little bit of movement over there. My ears are going off.
So what are you looking for out there? Like, what are you hoping to see or connect with?
I'm hoping to see one of the soldiers or anybody that maybe would let me talk to them. You know, what is going on with the
Hello?
woodline.
Hey!
So that's when you're sick?
Jesus.
I was shoved. I actually went out there and we actually took a tape measure, and you could see where my butt print was and where the K2 was sitting. And it was actually 8 feet.
You push 8 feet. Wow. This is a salty spirit.
I don't know.
This is the one that pushed Salty. Let's play that one more time.
Well, you know, I actually want you. Let's play that because I want to comment on this Dogman thing because something came to me as I was watching this.
YouTube's gonna hate this show.
Good.
I don't
Oh
care.
well.
Yeah.
Hello? Hey!
Was there a growl?
Mhm.
Was there a growl?
And you watch, I'm shaking. Huh? There was a growl in there.
Okay,
Mhm.
so before we even got to the conversation with Dogman, when you started saying what's that weird smell, and something got thrown at me, my brain
Mhm.
initially went to, is there a Sasquatch in that area? Because those are the two things. You know, throwing items is very familiar with
Mhm.
Sasquatch, and then a bizarre smell. Can you describe the smell?
It was between like a stinky dog and rotten eggs.
Okay, that's exactly the kind of description we get for Sasquatch, which is the wet dog, you know, slash
Yeah.
Mhm.
rotten
Wow.
egg, sulfur kind of. And so
I was gonna say
this
sulfur. Yeah.
sulfur. So, you know, and sulfur in much of the Western tradition is linked to demons and things like that, right? So,
Mhm.
but since I believe Sasquatch and Dogman are just various forms of what I would call jinn, interdimensional beings, they're
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
various shapeshifters taking those roles. But this phenomenon, it's also in the Islamic tradition that when the jinn appear, you can smell them, right? They have this awful smell, right? And so I think that this is an interdimensional being, whether it's a Sasquatch, a Dogman, or something else that's there that was interacting with you from the very beginning. It threw the thing at you. It sent its scent as a warning. You didn't listen.
Right.
It gave you the
Yeah.
growl, and then it pushed you. That's what I think happened. All the pieces point to that.
Yeah, all I seen coming at me was this massive black wall. You know, my first instinct was just like, no, no, no. You know, I'm trying to put my hands up, and it was too late after that.
And you have injuries from that, correct?
Yeah, I broke my wrist.
Wow.
That's no joke. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
So these things
People
do
don't
happen.
generally go to the trouble of a YouTube video, right? So
No.
people are,
If you watch it through,
you know,
I'm shaking. I'm not trying to hold it together, and I'll try to play it tough. But yeah, I walk out of there. I'm done.
You're probably, yeah. Don't try that at home, and don't eat Tide Pods.
No.
Definitely not.
Wait a minute. What was the second part again?
Nothing.
Oh
Salty.
no. All right. Never mind. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't say that. I didn't say that at all.
do whatever you got to do. No, it's all. So forgive me, please. I have to head out in just a couple minutes. Is there any sort of last thing you want me to address?
I want to address
And
is that you broke the internet, first of all, and your Patreon is a big part of that. And you break stories on your Patreon, and you're the one who's with the FTX link to Disney. That was you that pulled that story together, and using your your skills as a lawyer and then as a writer and your knowledge of Hollywood to draw that link. Cameron, that's amazing. Like, I know this is not this show, but dude, unreal.
Well, thank you. And if anyone wants, we won't have to bring it in here because that brings a nice, boring financial crisis on top of a fun paranormal evening talk. So, but yeah, I mean, I have posited publicly my theory, speculation that Bob Chapek at Disney was fired because there's a hidden FTX scandal that they were hiding, and constantly changing the narrative keeps supporting that. And then the last break happened last week where you had the FTX spokesman accidentally drop Bob Iger, current CEO's name, when talking about the big investors in FTX. They meet on CNBC and immediately changed the topic. Oops. Yeah, we don't need to talk about that. Okay. And then on my Patreon, and I'll share this with you here because not people know this. On my Patreon this weekend, I got a message because I have Disney insiders on my Patreon and who've actually fed me stuff that's allowed me to scoop the industry several times. And this has not been confirmed. I was getting from a trusted source who's been writing before, who sent me a message on Saturday after I did this talk on Friday that, look, I think the FTX spokesman accidentally spilled the whole beans, that they're hiding, that Disney's hiding this, right? And on Saturday, I get a message from one of my sources saying, I think you need to be careful now because this source is inside of Disney. And they're like, we just got word, at least at the top management level, to shut down all conversation about FTX inside the company. That if any employee is found talking about it, that they're to be reported internally to have a talking to, that you don't talk about this topic, So clearly I've walked into a hornet's nest here, but I interdimensional being.
What do you think?
So,
but Disney and those, it's kind of, the connection seems fairly clear to me. But no, I mean, my question is, there's obviously some litigation now against Disney for not upholding what one would say would be the best interest of the shareholders, given the profitability over the last year or so. Do you, and I'm asking you to postulate, do you think that part of that litigation could potentially, if it goes to trial, uncover some of what you're saying? Is that potentially a worry, given what they're talking about? Because once you start getting files, I don't know, you're an attorney, you would know, would this potentially start leading down a rabbit hole? Or would it take more than that?
That's why they're assuming my source isn't lying to me about what's happening at that level of Disney. I just have to go with that assumption because I don't see the documents, but these people have been consistently right in the past, right? And so assuming that is the truth, then it is impossible for them to hide this. And that's why they're panicking and telling the managers that we're talking about top level division heads, let us know who's talking about inside the company, because they're afraid. They're afraid of that's what actually what the person said to me. I was like, did I trigger whistleblowers, which will blow it open, right? Kamran Pasha is just speculating based on data. The problem is I've now put the conversation in people's heads inside of Disney, like average people, like, hey, did we get involved in FTX, or talking about it at like over the water cooler? And that's the kind of thing that somebody, because whistleblowers have come out and revealed accounting fraud at Disney in the past. There's one that went to the SEC over $3 billion accounting fraud. It was immediately fired when she reported it internally, that there's accountants that said these numbers don't add up.
I remember that.
Now, just a couple of years ago under Bob Iger, right? So that's their greatest fear, that somebody inside the company will look in somewhere where they shouldn't and say, "What's this, boss?" And so it's just because I've triggered a conversation where I don't have access to the files, but somebody does. And so that's why they're trying to quash that conversation, apparently internally inside of Disney, because that's the only thing they're afraid of, is some other person who can access those files and not burn them before the lawyers get to them is going to be the problem. And so it's not possible to keep this thing, hidden. But the people, powerful people do what they always do, which is they always try to cover up, never realizing it doesn't work, right? And not in the world of social media. It's just not possible in 2022. So I do think it's going to blow wide open. And then, I think Disney's going to be in major PR and probably legal crisis moving forward, which is exactly what would happen when you fire your CEO mysteriously over the weekend without explanation, right? A few days after FTX scandal happens, right? It's just too bizarre a thing to happen at the same time. So whatever, we'll see what happens here. But that reveals that our paranormal friends, are not only dark forces we have to deal with in this world.
It is fascinating because this is the first collision of stakeholder capitalism intersecting was shareholder capitalism, or ESG,
Yeah, and stakeholder
meaning what
capitalism,
used to be capitalism. Yeah, exactly. So we'll
That's
see
what
how this
it's
one
just
plays
it's
out.
just communism. It's really like, I'm going to make money. Oh, here I just made $100 million profit for my shareholders who own the company.
Yep.
I'm going to give it away to all these causes I believe in. It's like, that's actually a misuse of your shareholders' personal money, right? So
yes,
and
100%.
cash is coming. Yes,
Mhm.
but
Thank you so much for your time, Cameron. I really appreciate you coming on, and I want to talk Muhammad I of Granada with you sometime, if you'd be okay with that.
Come back on. Everyone on the channel is salty. Nicole and Don, we didn't really hear much from you, but
No, you're good. I was here. Don't worry. I'm listening the whole time. I just have nothing to add, so I don't want to interrupt anybody.
Because you're Bob Iger. You're actually Bob Iger.
Yeah,
I'm a fan. He's Chapek. That's what it is. He's
I'm right. Oh, this kid figured it out. This little kid. But I'd be honored to come on any of your channels. What I'll do is, before I go, I think Zach, you have my contact info, but in the private chat, I'm just leaving my personal email.
Okay.
Especially if you want me to come on to talk about paranormal stuff, that's my thing. All of you just drop me.
And Cameron, I just want to fanboy for a second, because Kings, I was appointment television for me. I loved that show, and it if it was on now, I guarantee it would be an enormous hit. Ian McShane, Sebastian Stan, that was your show. So
I was a producer on that show, and I was very proud of that show. And it was a show that shouldn't have been on network television. It should have been on HBO, Showtime, Stars. Then it would have succeeded. It was too smart for network television. Maybe next time I come on, I'll share with you my Sebastian Stan stories, because Sebastian, was an actor that he'd done a few small things on like Gossip Girl before, right? But this was his show that sort of launched him, and I worked a lot with him because I was on set a lot. And Sebastian's an incredibly great guy, and he was like 21 years old at the time, and I was like, this guy's gonna be huge. This guy's gonna be absolutely huge. And he was. I'll share with you one story before I go. So at the time, I was dating a lovely Romanian girl. I'm talking about vampires and Dracula and all that stuff. So I was dating a lovely Romanian girl. We're still very good friends. She's married, has children now. I've met her a wonderful husband, met her beautiful kid. So yeah, they're great. So, but at the time, this was like 10, 15 years ago. So I was dating this lovely Romanian girl in New York, and I was like, I want to show off. I'm a Hollywood dude. So why don't you come to set, right? When I'm on set one day as a producer, come to set. I want to show off the set, right?
Yeah.
Cool actors or whatever. And, Shane had just come off of Deadwood. Everyone knew who he was. She knew who he was, right? And so she was so excited, and she came. And she's there and we're all, there's the video village, as we call it, where all the cameras are, and all the screens are where we're watching the set and the actors and whatever. And so she's sitting there by my side, really excited to see a movie or TV set and whatever. And then Sebastian walks over, and I introduced my girlfriend and mentioned she's Romanian. And I forgot, Sebastian is Romanian, as in he was raised in Romania. He came to America when he was like 13 years old. And hi, lady, before you come here, right as I'm about to leave, welcome. So Sebastian, when I was, you're like, oh, you're on screen. They brought you on just as I was leaving. So Sebastian Stan was Romanian, and he came, like, I came from Pakistan when I was 3 years old. Sebastian was like a teenager when he came to America. So he's Romanian. And so when he found out she's Romanian, he immediately started talking to her in fluent Romanian, and he was incredibly friendly and gracious. Wow. And she was blown away that this actor, this very handsome actor on a TV show is fluent in Romanian, is chatting with her in Romanian on the set, right? And I scored some points that make me look good. But Sebastian is an absolute darling, a sweetheart, really good person, and I was so delighted to watch his career take off. The only regret I have is his personal phone number. I would always text him Happy Christmas, whatever. He'd always respond, and then I lost the phone with his damn phone number. So I've lost Sebastian Stan's phone number. I could never find it again. I was like, well, I'll get to Sebastian eventually professionally somehow. But he was like as I was watching Sebastian grow, I was like, dude, you just got cast in Captain America. Like, congratulations. I would text him. He'd be like, oh man, thank you so much. He's a really decent guy. So if anyone finds my phone, if anyone finds my phone with Sebastian Stan's number, send it to Zach, and he'll send it to me, right? Because I got to congratulate him. I saw him most recently on the Pamela Anderson story. He was great. It's Tommy Lee, right? And so
he was great in that. Oh man, he was good in that.
So Lady Bayflower, you come just as I'm leaving, and I was saying earlier we needed more women. We had one lovely woman, now we have two, but that's good. Now it's going to be balanced. There's going to be two dudes and one silent Don who's just silent there watching, like the
I'm just in the corner as always, just watching all the fun in the center. Don't worry.
Would you like to introduce yourself before I go?
Oh, hi, my name is Lady Balefire, and I am kind of a film school dropout. I was studying film production and mostly screenwriting and development. And I'm like writing. I'm sitting here in my room because it's cold, but I like to write now. And I've kind of you're in Hollywood and you've seen things, and it was a difficult industry to work in. And I was interning with somebody that was really close friends with Harvey Weinstein and had his kind of same issues, and I had experienced that.
They all do.
Yes. They all do. I mean, that's basically what Hollywood is. And I had experienced that before being a professional race car driver, and it just came down to me like deciding how much do I love this? And I did love it a lot. And did I want to put myself in the position where I was going to be experiencing the same kind of abusive situations? And I just couldn't say yes. And luckily, like, then the pandemic happened and I had to drop out anyways from Saul school because I couldn't afford to, because I lost my business. And then I kind of discovered this YouTube channel, and I've been doing what I really love doing, which is analyzing film, television, and literature, and talking about writing. So it's kind of given me a second lease on life. So thank you for having me, and it's great to listen to you and all of this paranormal stuff, because I've been kind of dropping some stuff that I've had in the chat, and I think that's so interesting, and especially because it's Yule, and I'm more of a pagan person myself, and this is the time when the veil like thins, and I'm really excited to keep going, be a part of the discussion now. And thanks for like sharing the story, both of you guys, and everything. And it's great to meet you, and it's great to be here.
Before you go, Cameron, I know she was the first female to win a rally race championship.
Oh yeah, in the U.S.
You're the one that was posting about you saw the ghost on the race thing when you were racing. You're the one that posted.
Yes. Do you want to hear my scary ghost story?
Okay. He's got to go.
I want to actually
go. Let's do it next week.
It's really
or
fast.
sometime.
You want to hear it really fast? Okay, so basically this was the second race that I did, and I decided I was going to race in a national championship. I'm from California, and I'd never been to Tennessee before, and we're in Tennessee, and this race was going through a Civil War battlefield, and the terrain there is really different. It was wet, it was March, and the ground there is clay, and it's very slippery, and it was my second race. I'd only been racing for like 4 months, and I was totally scared out of my mind because my car was sliding, and I'm going down like a 300-meter or yard straight away, and then there's a hairpin turn at the end, and then all of a sudden there is this thick, insane fog, and it looks so weird. It's kind of like it's above the ground, and it's kind of amorphous. Like there's almost like a shape taking place, and I'm just like thinking, because it was kind of in the morning, but there wasn't fog anywhere else, and I was just like, okay, this is weird, and I'm just trying to slow my car down so we don't run into the trees.
And this is in daylight. This is in daylight.
Yeah, this is in daylight. This was probably around like 10:30, 11 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was just like, what the heck is this? And then I found out later that this whole ridge that we were on was the site of a Civil War battle. And they had some kind of like artillery up there, and that there had been like heavy casualties and stuff like that. So when I thought about it later, I was just like, that is so weird. And I could see it because I had an in-car camera. It was just like a little V8 player, and I looked at that and I'm like, that is so freaking weird. And I've had other weird experiences where I used to train and stuff in the desert, but yeah, we could talk all night about this stuff, but I don't want to keep you longer.
I'm glad you didn't crash. I mean, that could have distracted you, right?
Yeah, definitely. It was like one of those things that like you don't really know what it was, but when you think about it later, you're just like, okay, that was scary.
Well, it's like Nicole's spirit. I'm glad it didn't like punch you in the car, right? And strike you, because I mean, they have especially if it's not just a spirit, if it's some interdimensional being, what I would call a jinn, right? They have the power to interact with your world in a very dangerous way, and so I'm okay with mist or vapor, but something that can physically assault you is a whole other level, right? And so I'm glad you're safe. So I do have to go, but I've thrown my
thank you so much.
You all have it in there. I encourage everyone on this panel today, please drop me an email, stay in contact with me, and if you have channels, I'm happy to come on. Lady Balefire, if you have any thoughts or questions about Hollywood, if you want to get back in or just chat about your own crazy experience.
Yeah, just chat about it. It would be fun. Or ghosts too, because I definitely have some questions about that.
All right. So guys, I got to get some stuff done. So God bless everyone.
Thank you. You too.
And I'd be honored to come back on, Zach. So I'm really glad that we did this, and let's keep the relationships going with everyone on the panel.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everyone stay here, continue to watch, right?
Yes, don't go.
2 lovely women on, right?
Yes.
And fewer guys, so it's a better balance. And hit the like button and keep that great chat going.
Thank you,
Good
Cameron.
night.
Thanks.
See you, Cameron.
Good night.
Night.
I don't like how cameras identify me as a man without even seeing me. That's kind of inappropriate, right? Can we cancel him real quick? I have his email.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you're not
I mean,
wrong.
would a woman say they're flaccid though? Like, what part of a woman could like conceivably be flaccid?
I'm not going to go into it.
I was going to say there's a time for that conversation, but not at 8:20
it's too
Pacific
early. Like,
time on
this is too
YouTube.
interesting. No, I thought that was really interesting, your story about the ghost and stuff like that, because when he like Cameron said about like, do you think it was actually an entity with the smell and the growling and stuff? That's really weird.
And I want to ask Nicole this: when you encounter phenomena, let's just use that broad term, is every situation affect you differently? Do you have different sensory things? I know some people, it's almost like an arthritis where you get a swelling. Some people have like, it's almost like a blindness. Some people have a ringing in their ears. You have an olfactory thing that happens with your nose. But is it different based on different phenomena or different things that you encounter? Or for you, is just essentially one type of a sensory overload, for the lack of a better word, when you encounter these things? Because that's what I'm curious about.
Yeah. Well, being like I am, and I didn't know, up until I got into the YouTube, everybody's like, you have to have a name of what you do. I'm looking at everything because I have a menagerie of things that go on. So, okay, I'm a physical medium, I guess. I don't know. That's what they just put a name to it. But there's sometimes whenever, I would just get out of a car on investigation and be over flooded by somebody's emotions, a spirit in that cemetery. And I'm crying and I'm bawling just like my best friend died, even though I was joking and laughing, 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. That's interesting, because when I encounter that type of thing, I feel it. Like sometimes I get that, like it's almost like that victim like abused child syndrome, where you're shaking a little bit like that, and then you dial it back a little bit. Some of it has to do with the aperture that you allow phenomena to affect you. Once you start to sense it, you can kind of dial it back a little bit and throw up the shields, for the lack of a better word. But have you ever been in a situation where you were overwhelmed like that and had to leave a site? And if so, what was it, do you think, that was causing that? Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I think it was just the overwhelming emotion of just whoever was there. I try to tell them, kind of just move back, give me a little bit of space. Let's get to know each other before you start throwing all that stuff at me. And they just wouldn't. And then the next spirit would come in and I would be angry. I got a tickle. So, I was going from angry to really upset to angry to, I was like, no, I got to leave. I can't do it. No.
Well, it's almost like express trains passing when you're in the subway and you're kind of caught up in the wake of what that is, What about you, Lady Balefire? When you encountered that when you were driving in the car, did you feel anything, or were you so focused because you had to
I
be?
was so focused on what I was doing. I used to like joke with people that like I could see like somebody could flash me naked on the side of the road and I wouldn't pay attention because I was so focused. But I do think this
California,
is just
I hope so. Gotta be careful.
Yeah, I mean, it's California. I've probably seen worse, but no, I think it's so interesting because of the way people experience stuff. And one of the things that I find that is really super interesting is like my brother is really sensitive to kind of paranormal phenomena. Like he is able to astrally project, and he does it quite frequently. And he also seems to see like shadow people, and he seems to think that they're like interdimensional people. And sometimes he says that they're the kind of people that he sees when he's astrally projecting. So it's not like he's seeing ghosts, but at the same time, he's somebody that's able to sense like the vibes of an area, or like if there's like we've been it's really weird, like we go off-roading a lot, and we've been in like places in the mountains where he just has like a really bad sense about a place, and he's like, okay, we need to get out and we need to leave now. And I've always been kind of jealous because I don't feel that, but on my own I have my own kind of sense of things, and I have been kind of focusing on meditating and getting in touch with that more. And I've had traumatic experiences in my life that I think might be blocking my ability to do this, but it seems like the stuff that I can sense is a lot more with the natural world. Like I can feel like if I focus, I can feel like energy, like heat in my hands, and I can feel stuff on rocks and plants, and that seems to be different than what he does. And I just think that's really interesting.
It's a different attunement. It's a different attunement because you were talking about that time to get the hell out of here because of where I went back to. I'm in the deep, far, remote Pacific Northwest. I'm just going to do that. And there are places.
My God, I have had experiences in there when I was racing too. I was definitely like, I got like my car kind of broke down, and at the time I was driving a car with carburetors, so it wasn't like I couldn't drive, but my car was just going really slow. And
I miss carburetors. Can I just say that? I miss carburetors.
Yeah, me too. The sound
I miss being able to take my engine apart while getting drunk, listening to Van Halen, and then put it back that afternoon.
I miss.
But I digress. Go ahead.
But I was kind of driving around in like we're doing a logging area in the Pacific Northwest. That place has such a weird energy there. Like it's just like primordial,
magnetic. It's the culmination of 8 different pieces of different continents geologically. That is geology, not woo-woo. But go ahead. Yeah. No, I mean, like where I am was a tiny little sliver of a continent that sank in the middle of the Pacific and then latched on over here. But it has nothing to do with North America. But go ahead.
I've definitely had some of the weirdest feelings I have where it's you need to get the frick out of this area, like GTFO, like don't ask questions, just leave.
Oh yeah.
Like I would get out of my car and I have goosebumps just thinking about it, the kind of just primordial fear I had of this place, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, please car, just keep going.
It's like Flaccid on the hood. Like Flaccid.
Brighter
hood.
The white one with the burning crosses.
What are your kind of experiences like? You said you mentioned olfactory stuff and the emotional stuff. Like, is it kind of like seeing stuff too? I'm really interested in this. This is interesting.
Okay, hold on. We've been sort of not so great with the chat tonight. We normally are much better with the chat. I have not been as good with the chat as I should have been. And good night, Mags.
It's true.
Yes.
Mags is going to bed. And good night, Jacob Einstein. Thanks for coming. And there's been some amazing comments. I hope to come back to some of them actually, because with some of your stories.
The chat's been on fire tonight.
I've been reading them. So,
Mags,
but good night,
I want to say that. Yeah, good night, Mags. I hope you are feeling better. Like I said, hit me in DMs.
Me
and
too.
Jacob, good night. Merry Christmas to everybody. Really, Merry Christmas to you guys. You guys are awesome.
Yep.
And I am demonetized, but if you would like to make a tip, you can. It's with the Stream Elements link at the top of the page.
Just send it to Salty Travel and See. I'll give it to him.
You can do that too. That's fine. That's fine.
No, I won't.
But we were going to try to roll back to some of the chat comments earlier, and we got Wakazashi's Tea Houses. Has been in and out, and I say that with Gray, and I miss him. So hope to see you again soon, buddy. Maybe Friday. Nosferatu, you've been killing it. You've been edging the troll line with Cameron, and that's all good. Very much edging the troll line. It's okay. Dildo, and thank you with 13 Spirits for picking up the wrench and helping with some links. So you guys are awesome. And Shelby AC, keep that mic warmed up, and let's go back to our amazing guest.
Yeah, so I would love. Oh, sorry.
Going with that, where I was going with that, and I'll let you go, I promise, was I've been doing paranormal investigation here since I got back. One is a haunted hotel, a very famous one in Port Townsend, Washington. The other one is the site of a mysterious downdraft where there was no weather in the far western edge of Washington state, where over 100 old growth cedars were all broken and fell down exactly the same direction, with nobody knows why. And so I went there and did some investigation and looked at the site. But going around some of these places, it's interesting because you can be driving down a spooky, dark, very tree dense Pacific Northwest 2-lane road, and it's just fine. And then you get out of your car and it's like, okay. And then you walk to these sites, and it's remarkable how often silence. And it is true. It is a weird kind of silence where there's no birds, there's no anything. You've got running water, but it's almost like the wind stops. And I don't know what that is. But I've encountered this in a few different places. And it's something that David Paulides says from Missing 411. Whenever you get any doubt, there is no doubt. Get out, especially when you're alone. That's the biggest thing to this, because if nobody knows where you're going to end up on David Paulida's show as another missing case, you know? Sorry, go ahead.
That is so crazy.
Yeah, it's like when I was out there and I was saying, you know, I don't feel right. Maybe I shouldn't be here. Maybe I should have left then, but no, I stuck around.
But Nicole, you're primarily based in the Carolinas. You and I had a good conversation before the show started, talking about Western barbecue versus Eastern barbecue, and my North Carolina comes out. But you have also
that
talked about in
mustard sauce.
Tennessee. You've also talked about in Tennessee. Have you gone other places around the country and encountered phenomena, whether it be an old church or ruins or like California, Oregon, Texas, anywhere else that you've been there where you've had these flashes? Or is it, and not to demean anything, but has it been more regional specific with the attunement? And that maybe could be because of your family and your attachment, and maybe what I like to call epigenetic, passed on memory, you know, through generations. I mean, so I just like, how does it work for you? You know,
I'm trying to get what you mean by flashes.
So no. I mean, so well, not that, but like when you go and you visit, ladies, when you go and you visit other parts of the country, if you've done it, do you find that what you experience as far as phenomena, does it occur as frequently, less frequently? You know, like, is it more geographically based where you're home based? Do you know what I mean? Like, if you travel around, do you still get that same sort of a different sensations? How does it work for you?
I see spirits no matter what. Just recently, I mean, around here, have I encountered more of the stinky stuff, being pushed, attacked, stuff like that. Yeah, we do have some bad. We won't say what we call them in Illinois. But as far as the spirits, they're constant and they're the same. It's just like, you know, when I do help people on these missing people cases, um, you know, spirits don't change for me. They're just constant and they're always there. And if they need me, and sometimes I joke because I call myself the Jerry Springer to the spirits.
Speaking of Jerry Springer, I've investigated you thoroughly. And is this you? Are these books yours?
Those are mine.
Wow.
So you're an author, and can you tell us a little bit about the books that you've written?
Okay, so this series, the Masquerade, it was loosely based on a core family that we started on old Yahoo. Okay, I don't know if y'all remember when Yahoo was around.
Yep.
I remember Yahoo mailing lists.
Right. So White Wolf Productions actually brung out the VTM series of the Masquerade. And you had these different vampire families, and we actually had one of these families. And I took it from VTM in Yahoo, and I actually made it into literary VTM. I brung it to White Wolf, and they're like, wow, you can do this with the core book. I was like, yeah, we're turning it into literary VTM.
Wow.
So this is about that family. I mean, it's really complex. My character, which is, well, I had two characters that are in there. Tristan, which it starts off with him. He was a Nephilim. Okay. He had, you know, a mother who had no Christianity whatsoever. His father was a fallen angel. He was here because of, Lillian, who cursed man. Her curse on man were the vampires. So, you know, the Nephilim actually came, you know, the angels came down. They made, you know, the werewolves to kind of destroy the vampires. And whenever you get into the forbidden and you will get into the family and you realize how much that Tristan has always, you know, tried to betray and wiggle his way in there to be the number one clan. And it actually gets to a time where he is the only clan. And then the only clan is getting ready to be taken out by the werewolves. And he starts to lose it all. He starts to lose his legacy. He starts to lose his children. He starts to lose everything that he has built up. And that's what these are about. And it's awesome.
These sound fantastic. Where can people find them? How do you download them? Are they ebooks? Are these paperbacks you can buy off a site? Where can we find these things? Because I'll put that right now.
They were paperbacks. They were at Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. We had them for sale on Amazon. As far as digitally, we had them in the iPhone store. They are not out right now. I am going to bring them back because I am putting them into a trilogy book.
I want to have you on the phenomenal show that I do to talk about these, because I think it would be amazing. And sorry, Zach, I'm going to steal something from you. And
go for
it up.
That's not stealing.
No, it's creatively borrowing. No, I would love to talk about these things in a comparison of vampire fiction, because I think it's important, because everyone gets hung up, obviously, on Bram Stoker. Then we have What Happened Near Me with the Twilight series. In things along those lines. I live in the place where the damn thing is set. We'll just say that part of it. So all the bookstores, pictures of them, whatever. But I would love to do an analysis of why you chose to take the perspective you did on vampires, because vampires exist throughout all cultures. Indonesia, China, Japan, South America, Africa. All of these cultures have the same myth. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, and the way that I wrote it, I love history. So I find enough of a loophole in history to make it believable that this actually could have happened because of a vampire. With the New Orleans, fires. I mean, we had a lot of that with the Anne Rice.
Anne Rice.
Actually, her story got out before mine, but it's still in there. There's a lot of loopholes in there that just makes you wonder, even with the Civil War, makes you wonder, that could be possible.
We have a vampire in the chat, and he's getting a bit nervous based on some of the stuff you're saying. And so
giving out vampire secrets.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to like that. He's, you don't want to see him when he's angry. And we got a question from Tim's Talk for you. Are all vampires sparkly?
No.
So you guys missed when Vampires the Masquerade, that game was so cool before it's not so cool now. From what I've heard, I haven't played it in a long time, but back in the day it was good. It was the thing. World of
really
Darkness, the White Wolf games with werewolf, vampire, mage was another one. It was such an interesting, amazing world underneath the world that they created, and it got weird. And there was even a TV show that got canceled too early because the lead actor died. But
they had all of those amazing family names, like the Traitors, the Assassinites. I mean, you had all these families, and they were all after each other, and it was really amazing how they put that book together. And I just kind of went and extended it, but.
I want to shout out Maria
Maria.
with T and Telly. It's great to see you. Cheers to you. I hope you're feeling better. It's great to see you.
And you just missed Cameron, Maria. So thanks for coming by.
Yeah. Yeah. Just watch that movie with the sound off. It's fine.
Dildo in the chat. So what would you say with if you had to pick, let's say, one of your, I don't know if it's favorites is the right term, that's what I'm struggling with, most notable, memorable experiences you've had other than the assault and the cemetery?
I guess my most memorable one, if it don't make me cry, is the dementia patient at Old South Pittsburgh Hospital. Someone actually, and she is a spirit, they call her Nellie, but her real name is Margaret Rose. We went in just to, get a tour of the place. We were going to do a small investigation, and we were up in her room. And by the time we left there, the tour guide that was with us, another investigator I had with me, and my tech, we were all in tears. She was just, giving off so much energy. And, she had something very special to her taken from her. So I just dropped my investigation, and we say it in the role. It's actually on the video that, sometimes paranormal is not about the spooky things, it's about the littlest things. And I take this little old lady that I can see and I can feel, and I walk her down the hallway. And we are trying to go through every room. We go through the nursery, trying to look for this little clown doll, and we cannot find it. So
Clown doll?
yeah, it was a
Wow.
little clown doll. Someone stole it
Porcelain?
from.
Yeah.
That's normal.
Yeah. So we
Yeah.
took her back to her room, and I told her I would get her one. The very next day, I went to Goodwill. Glad I didn't have to fight the child over one, but they let it down. So I picked it back up, and I'm like, yes, this is what I have to have. And I wrote her name on it, and I set it, outside because they weren't open yet there at the hospital. And when I stepped back, she was in the window, and she was just, waving. And yeah, her it still sits on her bed today. I've got pictures of it. And honestly, I mean, I did not know that this little clown doll actually matched her bedspread perfectly, and I'm colorblind.
It's interesting. What do you think the phenomena is? Was this a closed psychiatric hospital, or was this still a functional one? Because I'm old, apparently. And the weird thing about this is in the 80s, there were these abandoned psychiatric hospitals from the 20s and 30s that were literally like post-apocalyptic hellscapes. And you could sneak into them. You could. And walk through all these rooms that were covered in moss with like water damage and mold and everything. You used to be able to walk through these places, and they stuck them in the woods. And I just remember as a kid, we'd go there and drink and try and scare each other. The thing is we were scared before we even tried to scare each other because of the energy that was coming off these places. Is that where you were, or was this still like a functioning care facility?
No, it used to be a regular hospital. Downstairs they had an ER, they had a dentist office there, they had, an OBGYN wing, they had a lot of things. And upstairs they did have some dementia patients, that were in-house, they stayed there. So it was a functioning hospital at the time. They do have it open as a research facility. It's not dilapidated or anything like that. They even have a hide and go seek with the ghost kids that still reside there. All the EKGs, everything is still there. You can go through it. They actually show you where the body box used to be, and
Oh yeah.
yeah.
A lot of those places had their own crematoriums. So people would check in and then they'd expire and then just be disposed of. It's kind of horrifying, but you got to think about the amount of trauma and some of the traumatic treatments that they did back then. And those places have, to me, when I went there, an ungodly, almost overpowering amount of emotional resonance where you kind of got to get out of there. Like you don't want to take that on, because offloading what you're picking up by going in there, if you're kind of empathic, which is a curse, you know what I'm talking about. You gotta get away. You can only drink so much, otherwise you're gonna get like bad energy poisoning, for the lack of a better word.
Wow, gender balance. We did it.
Yeah, I gender parity.
It's even now.
Purple, hello. Thanks for coming.
Hello, loves. How are you doing? Good evening.
Doing well. It's been a long day for you, but thanks for jumping on here.
Oh, thank you, guys. I don't mean to crush the party, but I've been listening to you talk, and it's fascinating, some of the stories you've been telling.
Yeah, we're lucky to have great guests tonight, and it would have been nice to have you here for the whole thing. But yeah, you're not crashing the party if you're invited, though, Purple.
Wow.
That's not how that works. Yeah, but so tell me about when you go out, if you don't mind, Nicole, and when you go and plan to do visit a sanitarium, for example, or sanatorium.
Either or.
Okay. What do you take with you? Who do you go with? Have you ever spent the night? Is there places that you get to when you? These are a lot of questions. Would you get into because I want to do this. I'd love to be able to go do that. We have nothing abandoned in Canada because it's all so new, or not much of it anyway. For now.
Well, your constitution's abandoned, but I don't know if you can visit that.
We don't even have that. We have a charter.
Charter rights.
Yeah, I know it's a cheap imitation. Like, have you ever gone into a place and felt I have to leave? Like, what's that experience like from beginning to end for you?
I've never really had the feeling to leave, and if I did, it's just like, with the other one, I tend to stay anyway and to see what we can get. I mean, that's what we're there for, is to see what we can get. First of all, before we actually go into a place, we're going to get the history on it. Sometimes I don't like to know. I'm the person that likes to go in blind. So if I have another investigator with me, they have the history on board. That way, if I say something, they could be validated, later. We carry the bare minimums. I mean, a lot of people have, the bells and whistles, and we have a K2. We have EMFs. We have those little cat balls, those work wonders, with some spirits. We have, spirit box sometimes with the portal. So, you don't have all that white noise going on. There's just, we set out a plan. We try to debunk first, get the stories, what's happened here. Why is it happening here?
Mhm.
Okay, are we going around? Is it too wet? Is there something going on? Or is there actually something there? What helps is me, if I see them, and I'm sitting there trying to debunk them for debunking purposes, because not everybody can see them like I do. I'm just, okay, debunk, and then we'll go on with what I can tell you. And then,
Zax, sorry, I need to interrupt. Zax, you want to tell Cameron to come on, or should I just say, Cameron, please come back on?
Cameron,
go ahead,
please come back
Nicole.
on.
Please, Cameron.
Yeah.
come
Weird.
back.
No, I tried to respond in chat. It won't let me respond to my own chat. I don't
I
understand
know.
why that is.
Nicole, just talk over us because we're
Yeah,
rude.
sorry.
Please go ahead.
Yeah,
no,
go
no,
ahead.
no.
Yeah.
Don't take that the wrong way. It's just I know Zax really well, so I had to do that. So
Yeah.
there you go.
But yeah, we just, try to debunk and then start the investigation. Keep your cameras rolling, because you never know what you're going to get. You never know.
And how many people would you go with generally?
Well, right now I have a 2-person team. So 2. There has been I have been with, so me and my team, like I said, consists of 2 people. I have been with other groups that have 5. So there's 5, 6, there's probably maybe 12 of us in one building, but we're not all in the same spot. We use walkie-talkies to communicate, like at penitentiaries and stuff. So
Do you find the more people you have, the more diffused it is, or does it kind of, for the lack of a better term, chase away or mute the phenomena that you want to find? Is it better with a smaller team, or is it that is kind of irrelevant for you?
no, I just think with smaller teams, it's easier that you're not corrupting each other's evidence, because if there's, the floors are thin, or, the walls or anything, and, we're sitting there holding, an EVP session, these people over here are talking, are we going to be getting that, stuff through the walls or through the floors? So with a smaller team, you don't get all that extra corruption that, the other teams could be causing. So we like to go in small. But then again, if it's a big place, it's hard to cover.
Well, and I like to come in big, which is big re-entrance. So I was trying to get work done because I have work to do. And I told myself I only spent an hour, but I had this on in the background, and the conversation was just so compelling, and just kept going and going. And then my lovely UK friend, Purple Backery, joined.
I know.
Who's my favorite UK blogger, and I was like, it's 5 a.m. in the morning over there. If she's gonna come in at 5 a.m., I can do my work a little bit later. So
hello, Cameron. Great to see you.
It's great to see you, Purple.
It's not crashing, Cameron, ever.
I left just as it started picking up. So now I'm just going to sit here and listen, because now I can shut up because I was dominating the first hour, and now I just want to hear all these incredible stories.
Yeah,
well played. Well played.
Because a lot of people ask you about like scary stuff and weird things happening, but like, have you ever had like a really positive experience with the paranormal?
Oh, I have a lot more positive than I have negative. With helping out the spirits.
How would you define that experience? What would you say is the demarcation between a positive and, let's say, a confrontational, aggressive, or negative experience like what you say?
Negative experiences would be getting my wrist broken. A positive experience would be helping Nellie find her doll, or helping Manny get his chair back, or as I even went into a family home one time on investigation, I can't say who, there was an old gentleman there that just did not like children, and she had 2 kids. And it came down to actually me setting them at the table with the family and, okay, let's figure out how we can make this so you can live together. Because actually, whenever you buy or you get an old home, some people don't realize it was their home first, and you're now invading their space. So I kind of had to draw the lines of what can we do to keep him happy so you're not having experiences. And she was open to it, and everything that he was saying, well, I don't like the children running. Okay, we can't make children not run because that's what children do, but let's not run after 10 o'clock at night in the house. Okay. He wanted a place for his own things. Well, they had an extra spare bedroom. I said, that's fine. We could do that. She's like, oh yeah, we could do that. I said, what kind of things do you want in your room? And he started to explain to me, what his bed was like, what his dresser was like. So we set up this bedroom like it was from the 1940s. We even hung men's clothes in there with his size. She put up a door thing with his name on it. She'll say every day, even though that she don't see him, she knows where his favorite chair is. She'll say, "Good morning, Bob." And, just leave it at that. And they have not had any experiences in that house. And that is a positive experience when you can help people in that way.
Yeah, I know I've had experiences where, like, one of the most positive experiences I ever went to, I was like on the coast, camping on the coast of Washington, and we were kind of up by a campground that was like around a beach, but up above the hill.
Where?
It was on, I don't remember. I think it started with a B. No, it was it was
Bellingham? Bellevue? Doesn't matter. Go ahead. Sorry, I'll shut up.
I don't know, but I thought you lived in Texas, dude. Anyway, but yeah, so I was up there, and I just got a DSLR camera, and I was taking pictures of the cemetery because I just thought it was really beautiful. There was like wild roses and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I just got like the most comforting and peaceful feeling. And I've had some experiences with like severe illness when I was a kid, and I've had near-death experiences, and that was like, it wasn't scary. It was like one of the most comforting experiences that I've ever had. And when I was up there, I had that same kind of comfort and peaceful, like feeling of serenity there. And I'm just like, I feel like it was definitely paranormal. And I was watching the sunset go down, and I was sitting on this kind of, there was like a circular kind of, like a, I don't know how to describe it. It was kind of like a veranda kind of thing set up by the, you could look over the water and stuff. And I was like, this was like the most peaceful place I would ever want to be like buried at. And it's like the feeling that you're not alone. And it was just really pleasant and nice. And I really appreciated that. Yeah, and I thanked the people there when I left too.
Yeah, you probably weren't alone. If you felt like there's that gut instinct that, we get for a reason.
I've had other experiences like that where I've needed help. I was having a really hard time, and I've asked my ancestors to be there with me, and they did not let me down. I 150% believe that, and I thank them for doing that for me. That's really, really cool.
Right. Lady Balefire, may I ask a question without doxing you or too personal? What is your ethnicity? What is your heritage?
My dad is Dutch German, and my mother's Italian.
Okay.
Isn't that like Alexander Daddario? Are you Alexander Daddario? I think she's actually that combination.
Dude, 100%.
I did not know that. No, like, yeah, I have his family moved. They were like living in the German-speaking part of the Netherlands a million years ago, and then they lived in the Ukraine for a time, and then they got chased out by the Soviets and lived in Canada. And then my dad was born in Canada, and he moved down to Southern California, and that's where we live.
Wow.
He escaped Canada.
I know. I have a lot of family in Canada, but
you got out of there just in time. You got out of there just in
time.
It
is very interesting, and I'm definitely like the more like pagan person in my family. Like most of my family is Christian. Like my dad's family's Mennonite and stuff. So for me to be kind of into this kind of stuff is kind of
Mhm.
weird, but I definitely
much-
feel like
really.
a
How much
connection
going
to
bad?
things.
Almost going bad.
Yeah, seriously. It's,
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think it's kind of sad. Like when a lot of people talk about paranormal stuff, it's always like some angry ghost or something like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
I think
wow.
people really just discount like the peaceful stuff that happens, or like
Mhm.
some of the other experiences that I've seen. Like a lot of the thing, like I think the stuff with the Civil War is more like a residual haunting, where it's somebody's energy there and they're stuck and they can't leave. And
Yeah.
I felt like stuff like that too, but I've also like kind of felt that like I've had, because of my health problems, I really have a hard time going into hospitals, and I kind of felt like that kind of energy there too. That's
Hospitals are
probably why I
risky.
don't like going there. Yeah, but there's like, yeah, it's sad that so many people discount the positive stuff. Like I bet there's probably a lot of people with positive
Fair.
stories of paranormal.
Well,
Fair.
I wanted to actually comment on
Trump.
your background.
Go ahead, Cameron.
Probably
Go
just
ahead, Cameron.
because you said you're pagan and you have this Eastern European ancestry and a connection to Ukraine. I've recently written a horror movie with based on a true incident that was revealed to me by friends of mine who are very well-known ghost hunters. I don't know if you know Greg and Dana Newkirk. Right, they're very well known paranormal. They've got paranormal investigators. They're on Discovery Channel all the time, and they've got a sort of
Yeah, I think I've seen their show.
Okay, so they're wonderful people, and they shared a story of this thing that happened to them at one of these ghost hunts, and I was like, oh my god, that's a movie. So I started talking to them, and I've written up a feature film version of their thing, and the central element of it is this Russian spirit that was worshipped as a goddess. It's still worshipped today, called Mokash, a very, very powerful Russian
I've heard of that.
and basically they had the story in short was, they've got this paranormal museum of where people send them strange haunted artifacts, and one day they get this box and they open it up and it's just this weird wooden icon that has of looks like a carved idol of some kind, but it has nails driven into its eyes and a noose around its neck. It's very, very sinister and scary looking. And the backstory of the people who sent it to them was these two hikers in upstate New York were hiking through upstate New York and in the hills, and they found in a cave this idol, like hidden away deep in a cave with its eyes just like,
wow.
And they're like, oh, let's take this home with us. Like, no, leave it exactly where you found
Run.
it, right? That's not something that you want to bring home with you.
No.
It's like you learn that at the Brady Bunch.
Dude.
With you, right?
Upstate New York is some weird. There's a lot of weird stuff in those
there's a lot of like
mountains.
Dutch people and stuff up there. Like that's really weird.
There was an old Russian community in this area. So after they brought this thing in their house, and the people that found it brought it into their house, and then terrifying stuff started happening in their home, including one day they walk in and there's like a woman standing there covered in water, naked old woman standing there in the corner, like, and they're like, okay, we need to get this out of here, right? And so they give it to the Newkirks, and the Newkirks then start like waking up, and there's like wet footprints of someone walking barefoot around them, right?
God, that's just giving me really
scary stuff happens, and they eventually have to
Yeah.
return back to where it belongs in Eastern Europe, or not Eastern, in the hills. But what they discovered was that there was a religious tradition of pagan Slavs, of Russians and Ukrainians who had come over during the Tsar's days in the 1800s and settled in that sort of area of, up there upstate New York and that sort of Pennsylvania area. And they were fleeing persecution by Orthodox Christians for worshiping Mokash, which is still a living religion today in Russia. And so apparently someone had desecrated this icon of Mokash and had essentially brought her wrath. And so whoever had this icon that had been desecrated, the spirit was tormenting them. And I wrote an entire horror movie about pagan Russian, Eastern European religion. I'd learned all this stuff. It's like it's a living spiritual tradition today with very powerful spirits. Because when I started writing about this stuff, it started happening in my home. And I was
my God, I hate that.
But it's the attunement. It's the attunement. You intellectually and then psychically opened a gateway for something that your brain could have enabled. When I was in Slovakia, when I was in Slovakia, this like after the wall fell, it was the Wild West, right? You could buy a castle for like $1,000, like that's American, right? But I was just this ignorant. Well, you know what I mean, like $10,000. You buy like a castle, meaning it has like one wall and no roof, right? Okay, but it's like. Yes, but you'd be surprised that all of the pagan iconography, that as soon as the Soviets like fell, that stuff went up. It was everywhere. People had idols and maypoles and
They
all
just
in
hit it.
like
They
little
hit it.
altars. They
I
hit it
know,
the
it's
whole
so
time, and
weird.
it's like it is alive and well. Like you get out of Bratislava, go a couple hours out of Bratislava, and like you're in the mountains of Slovakia, or the same thing with Romania. Go up toward the Romanian Alps. It's everywhere by the roadside. You will still see all of the trees painted white up to like 6 or 7 feet, because that's what the Soviets did to for civic improvement, was to paint the trees white. But it's like all of these Eastern European countries, they never lost that stuff. They never did. It's crazy.
The rune would be the like god that was carved into the trees. He's like the main deity. That's really interesting, because I'm like not like my family lived in Ukraine for a while, and they lived near Moripol, but they were like this ethnic enclave of like Dutch, German Mennonites that got chased out of their country, and Ukraine was like looking for people to farm and settle this area. So they basically lived in this like total insular community. But what's really weird is that I kind of feel like the land left an imprint on them, because I studied a lot of like European like neo-pagan traditions and stuff like that, and trying to learn more about my family, because that seems to be so much just more of a like religious practice that makes sense to me, versus like my mom's family's Catholic, my dad's Mennonite. That is not something I've ever like meshed with. And that definitely, like the Slavic and the Roman stuff, definitely speaks to me more than anything else. But I think that's so interesting.
Yeah.
And
You're
like,
a throwback. You're a throwback.
I really think I am, because I'm totally like the farm girl, and it's like my grandparents were farmers and everything like that, and it's just like that's how I feel, like that's my connection is to the earth and stuff. It's really weird, but I think it's awesome too, and it's awesome that I've like fully like embracing it now, and it seems to be much more of like a flow thing. So
and I wanted to say one thing to Nicole, to flip back the earlier story you said about telling the spirit, okay, can't, or we'll tell the kids not to run at 10 a.m. So I have the mirror of that. When I was at the Mount Washington Hotel in just a month ago, November, I was there. The first night I arrive, I'm tired. I go to sleep. And like at 11 o'clock at night, there's kids running by my door, laughing and running. And I was like, and they keep running by my door, my hotel room. And I was just like, finally, I get up, the grouchy old man, and open the door. I was like, yeah, whippersnapper kids, go to bed. There's nobody there. There's no one in the hall, right? So I got there was like no one in the hotel hall. And a second before, you could hear these kids running and laughing in front of my room, and it's completely empty, right? So I was like, whippersnapper ghosts.
Purple?
You got those.
Oh, I was just going to put it to the panel. Do you guys think that there is a resurgence in the old ways and the old beliefs? Or do you think it's always been there, but people were scared to talk about it?
Let's start with
definitely
Nicole.
Scared. Sorry.
Let's start with no. Let's start with Nicole. Go to Lady Balefire. Let the ladies go first. And yes, I'm using gendered language because there's only 2 fucking genders. Go ahead, Nicole, please.
I think for me, I think it's always been there. And it's just with, with the change of overtime, I'm not going to get into socialism or anything like that, but people start to push it back. It's not right for everybody. So it kind of dimmers out. And it's always been there. I just don't think it's being publicized, or it should be talked about as it should be.
I definitely agree. I mean, I've definitely found a community. Like, I use Discord, and I'm just starting to use Twitter a lot, but I've been on Telegram for quite a while, and I found a lot of like just pagan groups, and where they just talk about like research of like ethnic European faiths and stuff like that, and kind of the resurgence of that. And I think it is almost like a reaction to this extreme like industrialization and modernization and transhumanist agenda. And it's kind of interesting too, because like, and I'm gonna go talk about things that Salty likes to talk about with like the whole like
you mean reality? You mean me talking about reality and calling shit what it is? Sorry, I'll shut up. Yes.
Well,
sorry.
no, I meant like the 12,000 years flood cycle, the pole shift and stuff like that, where there's things changing in the magnetic sphere, in the earth, the whole like galactic. I could talk about the science of this, but I think the energy is like literally changing on Earth, where like the veil is thinning, and I think people are becoming more in tune to how they were always supposed to be, and they're realizing how naturally that we live, and they're looking for something that makes more sense. and a lot of I don't know, I think a lot of like traditional religions and stuff don't give people that connection to nature that they need to have, and I think people are looking for that, and they're looking for like a connection to their roots and their own ethnic things, especially when there's such a push towards promotion of certain ethnic groups over other groups and identity politics, and you're just looking to find your own identity, so people start looking back at where they came from.
I just want to say hello to Lofty Pixels. Thanks for coming.
So I want to say the proof is in the pudding, to answer your question. So before I even was approached to do this or came up with the idea of doing this horror movie for the Newkirks, right? This was stuff that I just was found fascinating before this was even in my head. This isn't the stuff that was appearing in the bookstores. Guess what? Russian black magic.
Wow.
You know, and Slavic witchcraft, which are all the stuff, traditional pagan, deities and the rituals. This was already in the occult bookstores, right? This was appearing about a year and a half ago. That's when I bought them, before this whole movie came to mind. Yeah. So I want to echo what's being said here, because there is definitely because I believe in a history is cyclical. You know, I had this argument with a friend of mine.
That's it. That's it.
That's cycle.
I'm like, history ain't progressive, buddy. It progresses until it progresses the other one, right? And so,
Battlestar Galactica is a documentary. Let's just be honest about it.
but even on the more, what we're living in right now is we're living in basically the last days of Atlantis. I mean, that's what's happening.
Yeah.
There.
Right.
I was reading some Edgar Cayce stuff. I was like, you're pretty much, you know, the Atlanteans were like, let's try this transhumanist stuff. Let's try all this stuff, right? Oh, yeah, let's plug ourselves up to this crystal and see what happens. Nothing's going to happen, right? And they blow the whole planet, and everyone goes back to
like
Salty.
Salty, do you know about this Texas rock wall?
The what? I'm sorry?
I do.
No,
I do
too.
know about
the
the
rock wall.
Yeah,
I know about that rock wall.
That's freaking crazy. That is the craziest thing in the freaking world.
There's a lot of weird stuff like that. I mean, here's the thing: is what I'm gonna do is I want to let Purple Valkyrie go, because I think it's important to not mansplain. Because Purple Valkyrie is my co-host on Phenomenal, and she is the rationality to my irrationality. So let's let Purple talk.
It's a yin and yang sort of thing. I would agree with what you guys are saying. I think it's definitely a case of it's always been there. It's been maybe buried in our psyche, in our subconscious, but people who know always know. And if you knew you could pass it on, then you did. But I think as a species, I think we are waking up to there's got to be more than what we have at the moment. And Cameron correctly said, and I know Salty and Lady Balefire have talked about it as well, once society gets to a certain point, you can't push it any further until it collapses, and then it has to reset itself. And I think we're on the brink of that.
Yeah. Camille Pagula, one of the most famous, and those over a certain age know who I'm talking about, second wave feminist professor, has said this. Most liberal, one of the most liberal women feminist studies professor out there of her generation, has said the same thing Purple Valkyrie, Lady Balefire has said. Once a society reaches this point, it is collapse. Lady Balefire was talking about, I'm feeling a pull, a draw to something that is within me from my culture. And to me, this goes back to what is wired into us epigenetically, what is passed down through us, inherited.
Sorry.
Well, no.
I'm laughing at the chat. Out of nowhere.
No, they're crazy in the chat. You guys never change. I love you all. Merry Christmas. But what I'm saying with this is some of us are wired with this stuff, and I think all of us have it, but it's a matter of, do we hear the voice? Do we hear the calling or not? Because I think part of it is the same thing that happened at the fall of Rome, where some people saw this and they're like, bye, before the Goths and the Visigoths and everybody came in. But I think this has all happened before. And like Cameron said, it has happened before. It'll happen again. And that's why my joke of Battlestar Galactica was like a documentary. It's a cycle. Wheel of Time, written by Robert Jordan. It's a fantasy story, but it's based in Eastern philosophy that all of things are secular. They've all happened before. The wheel turns. And I think we're at a turning of the wheel. I wish it was not in my lifetime. I wish I had been born during World War II, but I wasn't.
Didn't
But here we
Gandalf
are, you know?
address that? Didn't Gandalf tell
All that we
I
have
know,
to
you
do
know,
is
I know,
decide
we
what
do
to
wish we
do
were
with the
born this day,
time.
but we gotta deal with
Dude,
it.
dude, 100%, Cameron. That's why I did what I did with my life. All that's left to us is to decide with the time that is given us. That's it.
That's interesting.
Mhm.
I have a question for Cameron, and it's about like ghost and stuff. And since you're Islamic, maybe you can inform me. So I watch this like ghost hunting channel. Well, it's not a ghost hunting channel, but it's like a collection of ghost stuff from the internet called Nuke's Top 5. And I have seen some like absolutely really insane videos from the Middle East with what they call jinns. And it's just like they're throwing stuff, and it's really, really weird. And I've also seen some really crazy videos of like Japanese ghost stuff, and I'm really wondering if there is like some kind of cultural or maybe religious thing that makes these ghost manifestations happen like this. And I wonder if you had any insights on that from your background.
Well,
or maybe you can answer too, Nicole.
You know, I actually would love to hear the entire panel's perspective. I think each of us will bring a unique perspective to this, and I think Nicole, especially who can actually see these beings, will have a perspective. So
Yeah, have you seen anything like that, Nicole? Because it's so crazy. Because these things are like, I've heard like people like filming into wells, and there's wailing. I've seen like giant kind of like big tanker things been thrown, and it's like nothing could have picked that up. It's insane.
Yeah, you're not your typical poltergeist, right? So yeah.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, the same weight and size, using some unexplained force, that goes back to look at Göbekli Tepe.
Mm-hmm.
Look at some of those stone blocks that are more massive than any of our current machinery could have moved them.
No,
You're going to tell me that was done with rolling logs up a like a 10 grade? I mean, come on. Maybe they were tapping into the gym, you know? Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know.
I don't know. I'm willing to entertain. I'm willing to entertain other options. I'm just saying that. I'm not going to believe everything, but I think there's a lot more out there that's probably been buried for a whole lot of reasons. And when the fall of Rome happened, and the burning of the library of Alexandria happened, one has to wonder what old knowledge from before was lost in that, and what's in the Vatican Library. I'm just going to drop that there.
Right. So if I mean, I'm just going to very quickly address from an Islamic perspective, and I want to hear from you because I think it's a very important question that opens up all possibilities here for our conversation. So just very quickly, for those who don't know, the jinn literally just means in Arabic the hidden ones, the invisible ones, right? We got beautiful sites here from the Umayyad. I think that's the mosque of Cordoba. Right?
Yep.
Yeah, I love it. I've been there, and so So it's part of the Islamic religion. Every Muslim has to actually believe this. It's part of the religion that there are two races on earth. There's human beings, and there is a pre-existent spiritual race called the jinn, who are interdimensional. Oh. And that it's part of the religion that God created human beings. He created three entities: angels made of light, jinn made of smokeless fire, and human beings made of earth, right? And that we human beings essentially transplant. Yeah, so that's part of the religion. So it's not, so today if you go to the Muslim world, it's not a legend. I mean, your car keys,
it's something that's definitely real.
Yeah, it's part of the culture. And so I think broadly what that does is when a culture allows itself to be open to these entities, they interact more with you. And because then there's actual interaction, right? Whereas we literally will have, as we see in our society here today, you'll have people like, you'll have a spirit appear right in front of their eyes, like, it was just a trick. Right. So they'll dismiss what's right in front of them, right? And they'll deny it.
Because like it probably gives them like a different energy to feel off of. If there's always if there's like a belief that's something there, it's like I think it just opens you to like another like energy kind of a thing.
Consciousness. Yeah, you add your
consciousness too.
Yeah, and so I will share one very quick story from Asia because it combines with the Japanese story, right? Just to give you an example of how real this phenomenon is, and to show the collision of Western skepticism. So one of my close friends is Indonesian, very sweet guy. He was raised in the West, like and he went back to, he was like study engineering here, science, all the science mindset. And this is a story he told me directly. So he initially was a skeptic like everybody else about paranormal stuff, right? Because he'd been raised with all the scientific, he was a scientist, right? So he only believed what he could test. And then he went to visit relatives in Java or somewhere, like Bali, wherever it was. It was an island in Indonesia. And this he told me he went there, see his aunt and uncle who lived in a village by this beautiful jungle there, and it was really lovely. And his Uncle Nan said, it's like it's safe out here. There's like no tigers or anything. You can wander around, check out the area. The only thing we say is don't go into the jungle during the sunset, because during the twilight times there's a jinn in the jungle that comes out, and it's very dangerous. And he's like, oh, whatever. Look at these stupid people believing this stupid nonsense. It's 2010. How can you believe this nonsense right today? So he didn't believe it. And one day, almost sort of trying to challenge them. One day he goes out, was checking out the area, and it's like sunset, and he goes into the forest, right? And disobeying them. And he goes there, and this is the story he told me himself. He said he's walking around the forest. It's beautiful. The sun is setting, the lovely light, whatever. And then he hears a voice. He hears crying, a woman crying in the jungle. And this is very similar to the Japanese stories, right? And so he's hearing a woman crying in the jungle, and he's like, where's that coming from? And then he realizes it's coming from above him. So he says he looks up, and in a tree, like maybe 10 feet above him, in a branch of the tree, is sitting a woman, in raggedy, torn clothing, and she's got this sort of messed up, scraggly black hair, and and she can't see her face because she's got her hands covering her face, and she's crying into her hands. He's like, what's happening here? He calls out to her. He says, can I help you? Are you safe? Are you okay? And he calls out to her, and suddenly says, the crying turns into this terrible, scary laughter, like it's laughing at him now through the hands.
Oh no.
And then he sees in the fading twilight, the hands, they're not human hands. They're giant birds' talons. They're like it's a human form, but the talons are birds, right?
That sounds like the stuff my brother sees.
Yeah, it's something like and that's the kind of stuff you hear in Southeast Asia. It's the kind of stuff you hear in Japan, the scary woman ghost.
Yeah, like the stuff what I've been like really surprised with the videos I've seen. It's like you get kind of stuff like that in the Middle East, but you get like really intense, like poltergeist activity in the Middle East and like the wailing and stuff. And then the Japanese videos, it's like really intense premonition, like ghosts that appear. I'm sorry, I'm getting a migraine, but
we did lose
like
Salty
really,
somewhere in there.
Yeah, they have really like insane, like there's details, like they'll just look different, and it's a lot more intense. And I just think that's so interesting to think that maybe there's some kind of either a religious or cultural, or maybe even an energetic aspect
there's an energetic
where they are on the planet.
Well, you've actually, it was actually doing some fun. So he's showing beautiful, because we both been to Andalusia, which is one of my favorite places on earth. It's literally one of the most magical places. And when I was at Granada last time, I met a Sufi who lives in Granada, right? And he told me, I said, wow, this place feels different. The air smells different. There's something strange about this place. He said, oh, Granada is a dimensional doorway. He said, to the jinn world. Oh, wow. And he said that's why that's what you're sensing. He said it's because this is a doorway. There's a few such portals on the planet. This is one of the big ones. That's why a lot of this artistic, incredible architecture you're seeing is inspired by this otherworldly dimension that's there. Yeah, and so, but that's the thing, is that there's dimensional doorways, and so I've just written this pilot on Moorish Spain, and in researching the history of it, we talk about jinn. Jinn, the supernatural, was very much part of the Moorish culture. Right, they're very, very. There's recently archaeologists have discovered a book that was in one of these beautiful Moorish palaces. They found as they were just renovating, and underneath one of these like floorboards.
Oh, dude, I saw that. Oh my god!
And it's like tied up in chains.
Yes.
Like, what is this thing? Right? Why is this book hidden beneath the palace and chained? So they open it up, and what it is, it's a lost book of Arabic magic to summon the jinn that had been buried there to hide it from people. And now, they have it. And I know people that have actually worked with the book, like try to translate or whatever, and it opens up and they start seeing terrifying, scary things the moment they open the book up. Like people that are like, I was just a linguist dealing with a book, and suddenly this being appeared in my house, right? And it's like there's other phenomena that we don't understand.
Oh yeah,
there always has been. And our ancestors buried it, and now it's part of the cycle of we have to make the same mistakes that have been made
There's
over
a reason they buried it.
over.
Yeah,
there's a reason they buried
Number one of witchcraft: don't summon anything you can't banish. Come on.
Right.
The reason I keep cycling through these images is actually because I was just there, which is an amazing place to be. But it's in Cordoba. It's called La Mezquita, and also the Mosque Cathedral of Cordoba. So this place encapsulates some of what we're talking about, because it was I think the world's largest open air mosque.
It was until modern day, yes,
and it was built like the pillars in this place are pre-Roman, Roman, Visigoth, Moorish, and then eventually further in Spanish. So all these cultures together in this one place, and there's a cathedral in the middle of it, and it's one of the most amazing places I've ever seen. And it's hard to, like, the pictures, there's nothing that can do it justice, Cameron. I'm sure that but you feel that power there, the energy there is unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. I had to restrain myself because it's a famous mosque, at least once was a famous mosque. So I had this, like, I wanted to take my shoes off and walk into the, and I had this impulse to pray, and like the Spanish guards are there with guns, like, no, this ain't a mosque anymore, buddy. You can't pray.
That's true. They were, yeah.
They're like, no, you can't be doing that, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, okay.
And no disrespect, but here's the thing: there was probably something on this site even before that. I mean,
by the Muslims, yes.
Yeah,
so
I mean, and again, it's
the Christians who had built it on top of the
bingo.
Pagan temple.
Some of those places are so weird because I've been to a lot of the California missions, and some of them are just really strange. Where there's definitely like some weird, not positive energy. Like this is like something that was not right. Like this is like extremely not right. Now I'm not good at sensing those things. I wish my brother was there with me, but like this was something that like whatever they did to build this like mission was just not right.
It's fascinating though, but the question is, was it the mission or was it what was there before? And the before has a
that's always
dot behind it. Okay,
Yes.
we're talking not 1,000 years. We're talking there were North Americans, real North Americans in North America a long time ago, and we're talking 12,000 years ago. There was something here. One of the most fertile, expansive, peaceful places on the planet. Okay. Yes, I realize that a quarter of the continent was under like 2 miles of an ice shelf. And yes, Zax, we stole all of your topsoil from Canada, but there was something here in all. Did the land bridge exist between Asia and Alaska? Probably, but that does not change the fact that there were cultures here. They're discovering in the Mississippi Valley all the way up to the Ohio Valley artifacts that go back to Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, with the textiles, with beading, and those types of things like that. And that is not, yes.
Have you ever read The Lost History of Ancient Americas?
You mean the Graham Hancock book, Ancient America?
No, it's not Graham Hancock. It's a different book because you should read it. You probably like it.
Okay,
I'll give you a link
just
to
hit
it.
me in
It's
DMs.
really good.
Hit me in DMs. Yeah, I mean, and again, this is a theory I postulated, but you know what? There's also a theory of evolution. There's also a lot of theories that are suddenly become the dogma that you have to defend yourself against. It makes a lot more sense to me, all of this. When I was 6 years old, I looked at North America and said, why were there people not here? Well, there were. We just didn't get taught about them. And every year we go, you know what I mean? Every year that we go below the soil level that they stop digging and we're finding things and they're like, well, we don't know what it means. What do those 8 and 10-foot giants that they're digging up in the Ohio Valley near all of those mound cultures mean? Nobody knows. So let's remove them from the history of what it means to be North American. It's insane. It's an inconvenient truth, dude. Sorry, go ahead.
That leads into something I want to raise. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you linked in directly. No. Raise because those giants are talking about the historical record says that a lot of these were found and brought to the Smithsonian Institution, which then denies having them, right? So
which lost them and denied it, and it was in multiple newspapers. Multiple newspapers. First-hand accounts that the skeletons removed. Yes.
So here's another one because I was developing a TV project around this incident that I found. I was blown away by it. So in the early 1900s, there were newspaper reports throughout the Southwest that an adventurer had found a cave in the Grand Canyon that had all these ancient artifacts from Egypt and Tibet.
Yes.
And then the article says, and they quote, they interview like a Smithsonian guy who's like, we're going to go check this out. And the Smithsonian sent people. And then they're like, yeah, we're taking all that stuff out. And then they interview the guy again. What you talking about? We never had this conversation.
Yes.
What do you mean? We interviewed you. You said you were going to go get the stuff. No, there's nothing there. I don't know what you're talking about.
Indiana Jones, the first one, top people, Mr. Jones, dude. That's exactly what this is, man. Totally.
The guy's quoted. It's like, this most goes like, oh, this is the most incredible find of history. We got Egyptians in ancient America. We got and they're like, nope, no, there's no such cave.
I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So that's a fun part of it. The people doing these cover-ups are not that smart. They're not top men, right?
No, they're not. Nicole, what do you think about this stuff? Nicole, when you encounter phenomena, do you ever This is a weird question. How do I phrase this? Nicole, when you encounter phenomenon, do you find you're encountering things that seem familiar, or do you ever encounter something that feels very, very old? Can you place a age or energy level on something, or if it's older, is it more diffused, or is that irrelevant with the kind of findings that you have?
I can age spirits
this
because
is what I
what's a
do.
word,
I'm a problem. I'm sorry.
No. But with me and being Native American, and I haven't been overseas to experience any of that. So the only thing really old that I can experience, and I have seen these little guys, and a lot of people call them ethereals. I think they might be jinn or the puckwedgies. I have seen those. We got one running around the house, matter of fact. Dealt with the puckwedgies. Have dealt with, and my mind has hit a blank because I ran into a couple of them. The same movie where the girl has one in the box, the Dybbuk. Yeah, ran into a couple of Dybbuks. Yeah. They try to play themselves off as people, which
Dybbuk box. Why do I know that?
What does that mean?
A
I don't
Dybbuk,
know.
yeah, a Dybbuk is a spirit that latches a hold of somebody until the end
It's
of
out of
their
the Jewish
life.
religion. A Dybbuk's out of the Jewish tradition. Yes.
Yeah, that's about the oldest I've ran into is like the Dybbuks and the puckwedgies.
Would you mind telling us I want to ask you if you would talk about Herbie.
Herbie?
Yeah.
We talked about the spirit that my mom named in the big White House.
But can you describe like what that was like?
Yeah, what is that thing? Yeah.
In more, if you don't mind.
Well, my mom couldn't see spirits, and this was whenever she was younger. And Herbie would come in, and they always, referenced him with, flowers, or it could have been a her. Like I said, I was going to investigate that property after my grandmother died, and the people that now own it told me no. But Herbie was always sensed in there as a smell of flowers, and he would move things around, and it was just a joke within the house because my grandmother didn't believe in spirits. It was not happening. And whenever I would see Herbie, I would see him as a blur. I never could see Herbie. So is Herbie something else? Because I'm always like, spirits are spirits. I see them that they're spirits, not this blah. I'm like, what is Herbie? And we've actually caught photos of him in old Polaroids where it's just a elongated with a blur. Usually
Really?
around the Christmas trees or in the middle of the staircase. We don't know what Herbie is.
And they won't let you back in the house to investigate. That would be an amazing thing to be able to go back and do as an adult.
Yes, I mean, just to get the property, the history on the property. Like I said, it was the depot, the doctor's office twice. It was a funeral home. My grandparents had it. It's a beautiful old home. It has a lot of history. I remember when I was younger, especially with that house, and my grandfather was turning the downstairs into his office because he was a state trooper. They were actually putting concrete into the wells and stuff where they were doing the drainings, so they could cover all that up and make it look nice and neat. Yeah, there's history at that house.
Purple has the comparison there for the UK.
I want to hear this, because this is fascinating.
Well, the UK is one of the haunted places on Earth, right?
Oh, it is, absolutely. Especially, you can't really go anywhere. Everything from post offices to pubs to just crossroads, everything is haunted in the UK. And even the woods. One of the woods where I live close by is called Callick Chase, and it's supposed to be one of the most supernatural hotspots in the country. And everything from black-eyed children have been reported to UFOs to werewolves. It's a really weird place, but just to go back to what you guys were talking about, the spirits and the creatures that you can have in the home. Yeah, the most prevalent we have would be like brownies, which are kind of small, mischievous creatures, which you can sort of bribe to not mess things up. But fairies we also have, and we were always told, especially growing up and going back generations, don't mess with fairies. You know, don't do anything to upset them. Don't go into fairy rings. Don't pass ley lines. Don't go into fairy mounds. Anything like that. Just steer clear of them.
So I have something for you. You were talking about fairies,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't bring her out that often.
Oh boy.
Wow, here we go.
Here we go. Here we go.
So my grandmother is Native American, and she fed the Bigfoots, and she fed the fairies on a certain day in June. She actually had a little thing that, cookbook that you're supposed to make. And she found this little lady next to a rose bush, and she put the roses in with it. And there is a fairy in here. There she is. She's right here. See, she's got her head face down.
Oh,
Wow.
oh yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah, she's
Let
face
me get
down.
my old guy reading glasses. Hold on a second.
I know. That's
Yeah,
what
I
I'm
see
wearing,
it.
Cameron.
I see it. I can see it now.
Yeah, and her wings are like right
I
in
see.
here. They're starting to break apart over the years. She does, her arms and legs kind of look like the sticks, but they hide in the fairy plants. So she would have been a rose fairy. So she would mimic kind of like a rose.
Sure.
And that's where they found her, and she put her in here for me to take care of.
I mean, you have an incredible artifact that could change the
Yes.
world. I mean,
Yes.
anthropologists would want to get their hands on it so they could hide it.
Yes.
But
Oh,
I've
that's
had her.
Wow.
That was interesting. I was talking or reading or something about somebody that was talking about like the Manx language in the UK, and it was saying that this guy was saying that when people stop speaking the Manx language, it's when they stop seeing these creatures, and it's just it is so depressing to think that some of these things are tied to the cultural spirit and the idea that the collective unconscious idea that maybe there is actually a collective consciousness
Power.
energy that actually exists. So when a people are unified together, that these things can exist because they're symbiotic with that. And if it's destroyed or it changes, it's not there anymore. That is so depressing.
You just described American Gods by Neil Gaiman. And it's fascinating because that's one of my favorite books that Neil Gaiman ever wrote. But it has to do with the power that you get through belief in prayer, in those types of things. Now, people can poo-poo that, but regardless of whether it's Islamic, Christian, Judeo, Taoist, whatever it might be, Buddhist, Hindu, that prayer has a power. Can we measure it with our current technology? No, but there is power in that. It has the power to heal. It has the power to solve. It has the power to kill. I believe that 100%. But this is something we no longer quantify. But if you haven't read it, chat and other people, please check out American Gods by Neil Gaiman. It is perfectly exactly what you just talked about, Lady Bellfire. It describes that exactly.
I mean, yeah,
What happens?
It's
What
I'm a
happens?
writer, and
Better book than show.
Yeah, it's I'm
Yeah.
a writer, and it's every time I write something, it's I'm casting a spell. It's I'm putting my intention
No.
into
We
this thing.
you are.
Yeah.
We
Yeah, you
soon
are.
say this. Writing is actually invocation. When you're writing,
Correct.
the concept of the muse is
Wow.
not a theoretical concept. You're actually allowing a spirit into you as an
You
artist.
are.
And
When it's good.
Right.
When it's
Yeah.
good.
You know,
are
you're a
correct.
writer. I know I'm a writer.
Yeah, but it's invocation, and that we and also we talk about this idea. We talked earlier when I was on before my first break about the alphabet versus the goddess, right? Is that
Yeah, that was so interesting.
so we have lost our paradigm sense of the magical.
Yes.
However, because of the alphabet, it ended up being focused through the writing. So we're still channeling these spirits through writing, but we're no longer channeling them through our eyes and ears, except for special people like Nicole who have that ability, right? But so we're still experiencing them through the pen, literally.
But Cameron, I'm sure you've had this experience where you sit down and you start writing, and you have no idea what you just did. You're exhausted and you read it, and it's like, where did this come from? Like, where did this come from? And that's the thing. We become the vessel, the conduit by which these things pass through because of attunement. And I believe that 100%. And that's where the truly beautiful things come from, is that I think that's what happened with Rembrandt. I think that's what happened with Da Vinci. I think that's what happened with Shakespeare to a certain degree. But
Van Gogh,
Van Gogh, absolutely 100% Van Gogh. But I mean, that's the thing. And some people it drives mad, and some people it drives to addiction, or coping to try and stave it off. But it exists. It's a matter of attunement. That's why I saw a UFO. Some people see ghosts. You got Nicole who can feel these things. Cameron, you have your own experience.
Shelby Scotch, it's Mozart.
Someone explain Mozart to me, because I cannot for the life of me explain Mozart. I can't. Well, and that's okay. I don't have to explain it.
Tesla was honest about it. Tesla was a genius, but he said, I'm getting this from guys on Mars. And he wasn't joking. Right?
And he wasn't. And what are we using now? Shit that they suppressed. They suppressed this for 100 years, dude. I mean, that's not a conspiracy theory, okay?
Well, the question is why and who is behind this.
I want to read this from Jay before we move on. And here in Iceland, elves would be the equivalent. Most real Icelandic people would build an elf house when they build human houses. So the elves would allow them to live on the land. So I think that's like a universal tradition. And Iceland you can't get much more isolated than that would have been at the time.
Well, but that's why when human beings started arriving on Iceland and on Greenland, one of the things that we have about the jinn is they like to be left alone. What I call the jinn, right? They like to be left alone. Human beings are essentially those noisy kids at 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. running around, right? We drive them crazy with our noise and our vibration. It just irritates them. And so they go to isolated places like the jungles, but there's not that many isolated places. Where would a lot of them have gone in ancient times as civilizations arose? They would have gone to Iceland or Greenland where there's nobody there. And then suddenly these Viking dudes show up. They're like, oh, damn it. These guys, because they're going to get pissed off. You've now come onto their one place. They had peace of mind.
It's true. He's not wrong.
The Vikings ruin everything. Huh?
No, but think about the ancient asteroidal impact, or some people say it was a coronal mass ejection that happened about 11,600 years ago, or 12,000, whatever it is. Something happened, and North America got wiped clean like a dry erase board, just gone. Mammals, mammoths, saber-toothed tigers, giant sloths, human beings, all gone. What more perfect a place to go for jinn than North America? I mean, think about that one a second, especially with flowing water. You have quartz everywhere. You have those types of receivers which are geological. Why wouldn't they have come here? And that's why I think there's so much more to North America than we realize, and maybe we even want to see. And I don't know. That's why I like Graham Hancock. That's why I like Randall Carlson. Maybe someday we'll know just a little bit of where we came from, because it is sure as hell not what they taught us in the 70s, 80s, 90s, or 2000s. And certainly not now.
But I actually want to briefly just answer what you asked here about why is this being suppressed? It's being suppressed from most of us. It ain't being suppressed from the people doing the suppressing. They got access to all this stuff, right? It's because when you want this technology, magic, when you want psychokinetic abilities that the average Joe Blow don't have anymore, you don't want that. That allows you to be the supreme rulers of humanity, right?
Bingo.
You don't want that out there. You don't want people accessing this vibe. They have all this stuff and they're using it.
Yes, they are.
Want you to use it.
But that's why the Iraq War happened. What's one of the first things that happened? And Cameron knows the answer to this question. What did they loot? The museums on the Euphrates in Iraq, all of the old artifacts with the old tablets, they're just gone. We don't know where they went. Dude.
It's deeper.
That's what I mean.
That's part of it. I mean, they looted those things. Part of reasons ISIS did all kinds of horrible stuff. ISIS was an occult organization of another kind, right? It wasn't an Islamic organization, and they were doing the same kind of stuff. But there's something deeper what happened in the Iraq War.
I heard some stories because I was in DC working. Oh shit, I have to be careful. I was working for an organization at that time. I'm just going to say that. And I used to get drunk with people who had just got back from there, who flew pallets of $100 bills and shrink wrap to go and get things. That is a true story, and I'm going to stop talking. It's true.
So, but I want to add to that story. So, at the height of the Iraq War, talking about like 2003, 2004, I was talking to a Turkish Sufi master in Los Angeles. And he told me, he said, the Americans are there not for Saddam Hussein. They're not there for oil. They're not even there for oil, right? They're there for something else. I said, what? He said, our Sufi order knows for a long time that they're there for the dimensional gateways, right?
That
He said,
would not surprise me at all.
yeah. So there's dimensional gateways in ancient Iraq, that go back to Sumer, that were stargates that would open up the other dimensional world of the jinn that you could enter into it. So he told me that, and he gave it a lot of detail about it. He said, our Sufi order knows where these things are. We've kept it hidden because we don't want people walking through these stargates, right?
But it's true. We didn't even keep the Monroe lights. We didn't keep the Monroe rights for Iraq or Afghanistan. You know where they went? China. It's like, what? Why the fuck? What, sorry, why were they? Why were we there exactly? I don't know. It seems pretty plausible.
Yeah, and we left when we got what we needed. So that sounded like a crazy story some crazy old Sufi dude told me. And then about 4 years later, I think it was Vice. It was Vice or whatever. If you search Iraq Stargate on Google, this article, I think it's from Vice, will come up where they're interviewing people and say, yeah, we were there for the Stargate. It's exactly what my Sufi master told me at the height of the war. It's literally everything he said to me.
It's crazy.
Heard of it is like
it says, but Cameron, it's as crazy as the Empire, or not the Empire, but the Two Towers falling down because jet fuel. It's as crazy as that. I'm gonna stop right there.
Don't ask about Building 7. Well, that's another video.
Oh, we all know what that's about, don't we? Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm demonetized already, so what does it matter, right?
Further demonetized.
Yes.
Yeah, you're in triple secret probation, just like I am with Google.
How's that list, Zax? Yeah.
Should we start talking about MK Ultra?
You mean like reality? Okay, fine. Yeah.
Like, I straight up know people that have experienced voice to skull stuff, so it's real. It's all real. Yeah.
What was that you said, Lady B?
I've known people that have experienced voice to skull technology.
Voice to skull technology. Okay.
So they can put ideas in your mind.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like there's a technology that exists that like can I don't know. I think they have just, in fact, they were just marketing like a speaker that if you stand in front of it, you can hear it, but there's no sound coming out of it. Like,
yeah,
but you can hear it in your head.
But Lady Balefire, that was just invested in by Jeff Bezos and someone named Billy G, who put a lot of money into that. It's a DARPA program. Again, there is no conspiracy theory. These are just facts.
Yeah, I know. Like, I mean, they have totally weaponized that. I was just saying that was a consumer product, but they were advertising, and I thought, oh, if they're releasing it to the consumers, the government's had it for like 60 years or something.
So when I worked on Bionic Woman, on the failed reboot of Bionic Woman, I still have the 70s version with Lindsay Wagner, right? It's one of my first.
She was hot, dude. Lindsay Wagner was the dope ride. Let's be honest about it.
So
okay, so
our field version on NBC, while I was working on it, we had to do massive research on where technology was. And this was in 2007. So I read all this stuff about what DARPA was doing in 2007. I said, no one would believe this. No one would believe this.
I was there in 2002 and nobody would believe what they were doing then. And I was in Seattle trying to tell people what they were doing. It's crazy.
Like researching stuff for scripts. Like I wanted to start writing, like when I was in film school for a hypothetical project, I wanted to write a story with hackers and Antifa, and this was for like Antifa's got it like really crazy with BLM and destroying stuff, and I started researching like the levels of what that organization was, and I was just blown away. Like it was insane. And I'm like,
when you start getting into the occult level,
you start doing research for like screenplays, and it's just like, whoa, rabbit hole after rabbit hole, and you're like,
and
wow.
they're noticing, the DARPA guys are noticing what you're typing. They're noticing, oh, someone's getting closer and closer to this. I should keep an eye on her.
I got my computer flagged once just for doing research.
Yeah.
No, definitely. They will definitely do that.
The great thing is no one would ever believe this. That's their protection. The truth is so crazy, no one would believe it. So what difference does it make? You put it out there, no one's going to believe it. It's too crazy.
We have some great comments in the chat too. Like you guys, they're loving this conversation, by the way. And yeah, both Nicole and Cameron, you've got, well, everyone knows who Cameron is, but you guys definitely have new fans with this stuff. So yes, absolutely. And I love when people start
more from Purple. I know she hasn't had any sleep and it's 5:30 a.m. I don't care.
I'm
Right.
fascinated listening to you guys. This is incredible conversation, and it's one that you don't hear on YouTube very often because everybody knows what YouTube's like. But it's very refreshing to hear it.
People that
Hopefully
just
that gets loosened
everyone
up because this
believes
is
it, but no one wants to talk about it because everyone
No.
thinks they're going to think they're crazy.
Yeah, I used to get yelled at by people in Seattle when I'd say, "Don't you understand where all your money is going in the DARPA light projection things?" Try and find images of DARPA high definition light projection stuff. Used to be all over the internet before. It's not there anymore. Remember what it was that Werner von Braun said on his deathbed in 1973 to his assistant? The final stage of the New World Order, and this is Werner von Braun, will be a faked alien invasion. So just saying, look for that one next, okay? You know?
Yes, put that one on your
It's
bingo
okay.
card.
One of the
So
great mysteries of the Apollo 11. It is one of the great mysteries. Again, presuming the Apollo 11 story is what we got, right? His narrative is true. They went to the moon and all that. So there is an actual thing within the record of Apollo 11 that if you go back and watch, you can watch the entire Apollo 11 news broadcast, 2 hours of them walking on the moon. You can watch it on YouTube, and I have, right, multiple times. And there's this moment where Neil Armstrong goes off book. They're all supposed to do everything on camera for the camera, so the world will be watching. And he leaves the camera, lets Buzz Aldrin do all the stuff, and he disappears for like 20 minutes. And you're like, where's Neil Armstrong, right? And in the record of NASA, Neil Armstrong went to this crater and then shut off his public radio.
Yes.
So we don't know. He kept his private communications to NASA. And so there's all these theories. Did he see an alien spacecraft at the edge of the script? There's all these stories. We know Neil Armstrong went off the book and disappeared for 20 minutes and cut off all communications, didn't allow the public to hear what he was saying. So he saw something on the moon that made him go, I got to go off mission for 20 minutes and deal with it.
Yes.
Right? That's one of the great mysteries.
You're not wrong. And the other part too is a lot of people are like, oh my God, there's this thing called helium. Is it 3 or 4 on the moon? We have known about this since the 60s. Helium 3 or 4 is the most likely, like 90% positive element that can allow for fusion, actual fusion, because of the molecular composition of it. That's why the Chinese are going to go and mine the moon. Never mind what H.G. Wells did in the the time machine where the moon blew up because they were mining it. But this is some crazy stuff, and it's wild. Like, we could have been to the moon. We could have been to the moon how many times? Because if we postulated it would have been fusion, we could have done it. Why didn't they do it? That's a whole other topic
Hey,
of
I have a
conversation. But here we
question.
are now.
I always like get in these arguments with people and like, yeah, we went to the moon, no, it was fake. And I'm like, how many? I find very few people that have my kind of opinion. Like, I think there's a secret safe space program that has existed for everything. I think we've gone all over the solar system, even to Mars and like the moon. And I think there's probably all sorts of stuff on the moon that we don't know about. But like the stuff that they show us is pretty fake. Like,
well,
you guys ever like?
Well, there's a great photo. There's a great photo that was on one. There was once featured on Ancient Aliens, which I love that show, right? I love that show. And there's a great photo that was on one of the one of the official NASA photos. It's like, wait, what is this? There's a photo of the Mars rover. Like, the Mars rover has a camera, and it's just like la-di-da, la-di-da, la-di-da. And then suddenly you're like, the camera, the sun is behind it, and there's a shadow of a dude in a spacesuit that falls over the Mars rover. You're like,
there's an entire like channel that's called like Mars anomalies and like moon anomalies, and it's basically like this guy that goes and shows how they photoshopped stuff out of these pictures that they come from like the moon and Mars and stuff. It's insane. And the guy will look at us like, let's just like take, like, this is definitely like something where they've used the clone tool or whatever, and he'll take it out, and like you could see there's definitely like, this is a structure, like somebody made this. It's insane.
Well, okay, so here's a mystical thing. So we've had the famous images of the pyramids on Mars, right? That look like pyramids. There's even something that looks like the Sphinx between those pyramids, right? So the name for Mars in Arabic is El Qahira. El Qahira is Cairo.
Get out of here.
The Arabs
Are you shitting me? Are you shitting me? I had no idea.
Conquered.
Oh, you want to know something weird like that too?
Wow.
It was when they conquered Fustat, in the 7th century, which was then a Greek colony, right? When they conquered Fustat, which is Egypt, they conquered Fustat. They renamed it El Qahira right, for Mars. And then we have these pyramids and the Sphinx on Mars. And so the Sufis have always known there is a Mars connection between the pyramids on Giza and what's happening on Mars. It was renamed by Muslim mystics, and no one knows why they renamed the city, or renamed the city of Cairo, what became Cairo. It was specifically chosen
That
to
is
be
so
Mars.
crazy. That's like, I had a friend and he's really into occult studies, and he's a tour guide and he works in the Grand Canyon and stuff. And he had talked to natives, and for a really long time they knew about the secret tunnels and underground stuff. And what's interesting is that the natives in that area have a name for the like ant people that lived in the tunnels, the pre-flood people that saved people, humans and stuff like that.
Yes.
And they're in their language, their name is Anunnaki.
Okay.
I get to work with indigenous people quite a bit and very closely, and I have to say, like, if there's easy to access, not easy to access for me, but accessible magic out there, it's something that they're able to do, because I've watched people, Bear Clan specifically, with their tracking skills, and they can track people in cities. So this is not, we're not talking about through the brush, which I couldn't do anyways. Now how they can tell that, I don't know. But in the cities, they're able to find people who are missing.
Virtually impossible. And it's virtually impossible.
And when you ask them, they can't explain it to you.
Because it's energetic. It's not really broken tree branches. It's energetic.
That's the thing.
They just know that
I've tracked deer that I've shot through snow,
Remarkable.
which I barely nicked through blowing snow. You can do that. You can do the Aragorn thing. But what Zach's is talking about is virtually impossible using the five senses. You have to kind of access the sixth one. You really can't. I mean, you have to. The Maka tribe, which is out here, way on the far western part of where I am on the Olympic Peninsula, they actually have some of the best damn trackers out there. They really do. And they bring them in to search for people in the Olympic forest, and they're generally the ones who do what they call the recovery of lost hikers. That's when they're looking for a body. You know what I mean? But to go into a city, I don't know how the hell you do that.
Well, that really brings us to our friend Nicole. Isn't that what you do? You work with
yes.
police agencies.
Bingo.
This is what you do.
Yeah, but the way I get it is I in tune to the person. Their spirit energies. Yeah, you're using the energies. You're trying to see what they're seeing. What's the last thing they've seen? What's the last place, or where's the last place they've been? You get to those places, and with me, I just keep getting the visions until the visions stop, and I'm like, okay, so I've got to be at this place. Look around.
So I mentioning Native Americans, this is a new book that I have in my collection. I've got thousands of books. Origins of the Gods by Andrew Collins, who's often on Ancient Aliens. He's a brilliant researcher, and it's a new book that come out that's looking at the Native American shamanistic tradition and comparing it to now archaeological evidence of a similar shamanistic tradition in ancient Palestine. We call this place called Kesem Cave, which is thousands of years old. It's pre-biblical, right? It's the whole Levant area, but they found all of these sort of ritual elements in this cave that are maybe 10,000 more, Ice Age.
There you go. 10,000 or more years old. It was a known technology all around the planet that disappeared when something happened.
But it's all about the shamanistic ability to use the mind to transcend reality. That this has been shamanistic tradition going back as far back as human beings. So this is something now we're rediscovering. The native indigenous people of America, just like of Australia and New Zealand, have always known this, right? They don't feel like sharing with people that ruin their lives, so to kind of keep it to themselves, right? And wisely so, because they're the protectors of this information. Imagine if setting aside the evil Illuminati guys who rule us, who have this information. Imagine the average jerk off on Twitter having this power, right? I mean, you don't want to give these people that kind of power, right? Imagine that jerk on Twitter had like mental abilities. You don't want to give them that power.
No, they're mentally ill, and that's enough power for all of us. IMHO. Can I share this real quick? This goes back to what I was sharing earlier, Cameron, and everybody else. So this is a 800-year-old spiral rock carving that marked the solstices for Native Americans. This is a fascinating story. the Pueblo peoples of the United States, and this is at Mesa Verde. And these are panels of ancient rock called petroglyphs, obviously. So the carvings are done by ancestral Puebloans who lived there, they said, until the 13th century, but they lived there before. It is absolutely fascinating because these rock carvings are just on the side of a rock like this. They seem arbitrary, okay? Absolutely arbitrary. But look at this, the scientific precision of this, so that every solstice, the light falls exactly where it should, in the center of a spiral. Now, the spiral is incredibly important because you see it through Celtic mythology. You see it through Franco mythology. And I don't know, Cameron, do you see the spiral as part of the Islamic or Middle Eastern?
We live the spiral. Because the central rite of ritual in Mecca, when you go to Mecca on pilgrimage, the Kaaba, which is the central temple of Islam, you circumambulate it, right? In the spiral form, right? And you do that because the idea is reproducing the spiral movement of the planets and the entire universe, because the idea is the angels do that spiral movement around the throne of God. So you're reproducing the fundamental movement of the cosmos.
Must just be a coincidence. All of these cultures separated by thousands and thousands of miles in tens of thousands of years of history are all revering essentially the same thing. Must just be a coincidence.
Mm-hmm. It's funny that you guys bring that up, because even over here we've just had the winter solstice, and at Stonehenge the light falls and lights up the central stone, and again the spiral is in Celtic mythology. It means eternal life, it's eternity.
Yeah. Have you ever been there at Stonehenge on the solstice?
Oh yes, not in the winter solstice. I've done the summer solstice.
What does it light up during the summer solstice? What does it affect on the stone?
It is the cross stone. So it's the there is an actual name for it. I'm blanking on it because it's a stupid o'clock. But yeah, so the central stone lights up on winter, and then it's the cross stone, like the portal doorway, that the light lines up on the summer solstice.
So we were talking earlier in this whole conversation about portals being open on the solstice.
Mm-hmm.
It's a portal doorway that's lit up. Yeah. That says something. And the spiral also represents portals in many cultures.
Yes, same. And each of them line up on ley lines.
Mm-hmm.
Like
that
so
we need to talk
like,
about.
To think of that.
We need to talk about ley lines.
Well, one of the things we have to address is something that I've been really enjoying, this Graham Hancock show, right? Ancient Apocalypse, right? And a lot of anthropologists and archaeologists are screaming against it. It was like, you just don't want to address the fact he's raising stuff that you have no answer for, right? And he's not bringing in aliens and other stuff that you can just easily dismiss, right? He's just saying there's an ancient civilization that was erased, which is true. Again, within the Islamic tradition, the Quran constantly says to human beings to travel the earth and look upon the ruins of the people before you because they were greater than you. That's a consistent refrain in the Quran. The past were not primitives. Go to the ancient sites. That's actually one of the things, like these evil groups like ISIS are so un-Islamic, because they destroyed ancient sites, where the Quran is telling people, go to ancient sites so you can learn from the people of the past who were greater than you, right? The Islam is very much as the idea that human beings have devolved.
We have.
From the past.
We have.
They were greater, and they were destroyed. Like Atlantis, they were destroyed. And you think if they were destroyed, what's going to happen to you if you get off the moral path?
Exactly. And the moral path is not a subjective thing. Like, I'm firmly believing that the older that I get, which I'm not a dinosaur, but I'm no spring chicken, is just the moral path, and it goes across cultures. Doesn't matter if it's Japanese, Indonesian, total gut stream brain, Australasian, we'll just say that. Any of those cultures, it's the same thing. The golden rule is not just a Christian virtue. It's within Islam. It's within Buddhism. It's within Hinduism. It's within many cultures, African cultures. What happens when you violate those things? Well, bad things happen. It really makes you wonder. And of course, because I come from a Christian background, I'm going to reference the Bible as, and I do treat it as a piece of literature, but are also interesting.
Well, it's a piece of literature that has
within it.
It's a very effective piece of literature.
No, but not just that.
Yeah,
but there are so many parallels. Look within Islam and look also within the teachings of Buddha. It's fascinating to look at the correlations. Maybe out of time, but they're there. So, but when you look at Sodom and Gomorrah, I don't know if there's a Cameron, is there a correlation between Sodom
There's
and
more than a
Gomorrah?
correlation. Lot is a central prophet of Islam.
Okay.
So
Okay, there you go.
The destruction of Lot and and the people, they're called the Qaumi Lut, the people of Lut, right? They're still archetypal. In fact, many days, the interesting thing is today when you have people critiquing Western hedonism in the Muslim world, they'll say the Americans are Qaumi Lut. Right.
Okay, I had no idea. It's fascinating because there's so much of a correlation of this universally within Earth, within our cultures, and I, as an ignorant American, don't know that. And I'm not saying that to be self-deprecating or to raise anyone else up, but it's fascinating because that's not something we're taught. Now, I studied Eastern religions and philosophy as a minor, and yet I was more focused on Buddhism and Hinduism than Islam. So this is interesting. It is very interesting, and I think there's a lot to be said for this. And I think this is a missing component to what Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson are doing. Is we need to fit those theological aspects into this and where they fall within time, because that, I think, is the key that it turns everything with the evidence that he's found. I really believe that. I really do.
I just want to say quickly here before we're gonna have to close things down here, at least to
this
be
is one of the best conversations I've had on YouTube.
Yes,
the best panels I've ever had. So we got to do this again.
Yeah,
absolutely. But it's been 3 hours. So Nicole, thank you so much for coming on. You have been outstanding. You're going to be the cover story for American Paranormal Magazine. You were saying, can you tell us about that?
Yes.
That's
January
when's that
edition
coming out? I want to get it. When's the issue coming out?
It's going to be the January edition.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the story? Just on you, on your life?
On us and our experiences and how we conduct our investigations, what we actually do, how we stay nonprofit and help people, missing or deceased. However, it's just a whole big story of, some things that we've done and what we would like to go to from here.
That's cool. Congratulations. That's well deserved too. Like you have put in the work, so it's nice to see. Cameron, sir,
yes.
What do you have to promote other than your Patreon, which is outstanding? So people should go check it out. Definitely.
My Patreon's my primary thing. That if you can also go to my website, which is my name, KamranPasha.com, and I've got a bunch of blog posts up there. I post more on my Patreon now than on that. But I've got a couple of novels published. You can order them through there, and people actually read my novels and go, this was actually really good. They're shocked. It's a good book. Right? And so if you like historical fiction, I've got several novels set in the Middle East and historical fiction that you can get through there. But my Patreon is the best way to interact with me. And Zach, you've joined it, right? And you've been going through it. Unlike a lot of Patreons, I'm subscribed to a few patrons, and I'm like, hey, I'm paying this dude $10 a month. It's like once a month I post something. I was like, I'm posting like 3 times a day and like breaking Hollywood news and revealing, this Disney just sent me this document that he's gonna get fired for it. So come join me on Patreon. It's a great way to interact with me personally. And also I offer on there for those, there are people who are who wish to become screenwriters, who are aspiring screenwriters or aspiring novelists. I have a consulting service that a dozen people already on Patreon have taken advantage of it. The Patreon members get discounts on consulting. So I read your stuff and then I provide professional feedback. And one of my clients, who's a Patreon member, had a script that he wrote that frankly didn't work. And I consulted with him and he rewrote it. He did the work. He rewrote it from scratch. And now he's winning screenwriting awards on that script.
Awesome.
Right?
Hell
and
yeah.
So come join me on Patreon. You can interact with me and you might get a chance to, if you got some project like I can't make this thing work, let me talk to a guy who actually makes money doing this and I can give you some advice.
Yeah. I've got to quickly read out a tip I got from Lisa. Thank you very much for $5. Says, thank you for such a fascinating topic of conversation. Merry Christmas. And thank you so much, Lisa, for hanging out with us all night and for being so great in the chat. This chat has been amazing. This whole show has been incredible. And I don't want to shut it down, but unfortunately I got to work in the morning. I
got a fire to start.
I would love to do this again. We were just kind of getting started, I feel like, but
so let's make it a revolving thing. Everyone, I've now subscribed to pretty much everyone whose channel I hadn't subscribed to before. So I'd love to be on your channels. Let's do this again, maybe in a few weeks, or maybe on another one of your channels, and just keep the circle going, because there may be new ways. Whoever hosts it will have their particular interest.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to have you back on, Cameron. You're an amazing guest, and I love this dynamic, dude. I love you going to the next level with your own perspective on these things, because we've kind of reached this point where nationality and theology, it's important. But at the same point, there's a universal experience here with it that we're starting to polish the grime of 10,000 years worth of lies off of. And it's exciting. It's exciting to be part of it, really.
And we learn from each other. We don't have to abandon
Bingo.
our traditions, our culture, our heritage. But
Correct.
learning from each other realizes, oh, I'm not crazy. These other people also believe something very similar. I'm not crazy. And the things of my tradition have value too.
Yeah.
And I want to say quickly that Lady B, I can tell by her massaging her head that her migraine is coming on strong. But she is learning to live stream on her channel, which is just getting going.
Yes,
so maybe
I'm
we
really,
can go to hers.
really
Yeah.
excited about that. So I'm going to be doing that in January, and I would love to talk literature, like film, and stuff like this. I'm very interested in esoteric topics and paranormal and occult knowledge, and just looking at interesting things, like talking about witchcraft and stuff that I do. That's interesting to me. So I'd love to keep talking to everyone. It's really awesome, and it's interesting getting other people's perspectives and stuff like that. And I know, I'm sorry, I'm a little tired because before I did this stream, I was on another stream for 2 hours, so it's been a long night.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you for staying.
Welcome to the
No,
party.
but I'm so glad
Welcome
I
to the
was here because it's so glad to feel the energy. And it's like, it's the solstice, it's the darkest, or it's like the longest night kind of a thing. And I know, like, I was really, like, I really want to go and make sure I do something tonight because in my own life, I just had something, it's the changing of the seasons, like, fall is done, winter's starting, it's kind of the death and rebirth cycle, and it's just important for me to do that. And everyone out there, maybe think of that in your own life. It's like winter, it's time to come out and come back out for the spring and get ready to do something good. And there's so much bad in the world, and there's so much, it's so dark right now. It really is like the solstice, things are so bad. But like, I would just give everyone, like, please just think about what you can do to make the world a better place. I know we've got this great fellowship here of creators and fandom and stuff like that, and support each other, and just maybe reflect on that to think about what you want to do with next year with the holidays coming up. So thank you very much.
Very true. We don't need facilitators. We need warrior poets.
I want to go back
really
to
do.
Cameron's Patreon for a second because I want to make sure that people know that I reached out to him on Facebook at random and he agreed to come on. That's how cool of a guy Cameron is. And I joined his Patreon after the fact to go through to see, like, is this something I want to promote? And yes, it is. It's updates all the time. It's scoops. It's everything. It's Cameron Ross. So I definitely say go check it out.
Yeah, because the subscribers, all the Disney spies who hate me don't actually bother to pay $5, right? So they won't do that. But let's hear from my beloved Purple Valkyrie,
Please.
right? Who is at 6 a.m. in the morning there, and that's insane.
Yes.
Joined us.
Oh, you guys are amazing. It was an honor to be on the panel with you today. So thank you. Thank you to Zax and thank you to you guys. You said it's so refreshing to be on a panel where everybody is on the same level and just keeps getting a little bit higher and a little bit higher. And I would like to echo what Lady Balefire said and just kind of come together as people. I know that's kind of airy
Be the
fairy, I
change
guess,
you
but
want to
It's
see.
not at
Like,
all.
it's not. It's like, just create the life that you want to have, create the world that you want to live in. I mean, we're fighting against a technocratic future that Salty's always talking about. And it's like, the only way to do it is sometimes you have to just stop fighting it and get into your own flow and focus on your own energy and where you can put your attention and your energy that's going to create something greater than yourself, That's just kind of my feeling right now, kind of reflecting and it being that it's a solstice and everything. So
Purple, you got some fans in the chat, of course.
Yeah.
The chat have been absolute stars today. I've been reading your comments and going back over them. And
thank you guys so much.
thank you all.
It's always good to have a smart chat, right? Let's just say I've been a few channels where it's much more broadly open to the public and brings out, let's just say, not the highest caliber of discourse. And so
That's
you're
very
very
true.
specialized group of people that want to be on this channel to talk about things. So
Purple, what do you have coming up?
Oh, well, I've just been lucky enough to do a show with Salty today on Woo Woo, which we do every Wednesday. Love getting to do it. He said it earlier, it's like a yin yang sort of thing, and he really does bring the knowledge when we get to cover these shows, and we cover as many topics as we can, both topical and ancient. So it's a really good balance. I've got a show coming up on Friday, which is just going to be a chill Christmas stream, and then next week it'll pick up as usual.
And Salty? Muted.
I know how to YouTube. Don't tell me what to do. No, so I'm going to be on OBG70 asked me to be on the 23rd. I'm probably going to do a surprise live stream because I want to talk about the psychology of what makes a good Christmas movie. I've been trying to look at the psychology of this. So I'll probably do that probably in the next 48 hours. I'm going to be on Mike OBG70's channel on the 23rd. We'll do some woo-woo. But I was also thinking about Christmas Day. Maybe doing just another chill music stream. I've been doing these things. They're not monetized. It's just music. But my God, people show up. Like 30 people show up just to listen to Bing Crosby and Danny Hathaway. And
because
and
music is
Dean Martin.
divine. Music is the fastest path to God because it's what we talked about. Sound, it's vibration, right?
It is. It is. And I might do one of those just because it's nice to hang out. But I've got all my Christmas shopping done. I've got everything wrapped. And my turkey, I think, is okay. And I have a lot of liquor. I just want to say, Zax, thank you for having me on tonight. It's wonderful to work with everybody. Cameron, it's always a pleasure. And I've had Nicole, it has been an honor to get to know you. It has been an absolute honor to have you share your experience and let me ask you questions. And I'm not saying that. It means a lot to me. And Purple, it's always great to work with you. And Lady Bellfire, cheers to you.
Thank you.
So thanks for having me on.
And I want to, I just want to say hello to our good friend Wakazashi's Tea House Gray, who is our friend in Japan. I put his link in the chat. Please go subscribe to him. He's at 975 subs. So close. He deserves it so much.
Yes.
So
I've been pimping him for a year. Let's get Gray to 1,000. He's earned it. All right.
Gray to 1K. Yes.
Yes.
Before New Year.
The campaign is Gray to 1K by Christmas Day. That's what we want. Dig Outlaw, hello. Thanks for coming. You're just missing us, but another amazing author. What I'm promoting right now is the 30th is we're doing a giant show to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the Two Towers. We're doing a show called the 12 Hours for the Two Towers. It's from noon till midnight on Friday. We're going to be talking about the entire Jackson trilogy, highlighting the Two Towers. I'm doing this with Flash to Phoenix and other guests, and we've got. I'm going to bug you later, Cameron. By the way, to see people will come and go throughout the day and talk about their experiences with the movies. To celebrate, this should be a unifying event. It's a positive thing. We all love these films. Let's talk about them together as a group all day long. I'm going to show the trilogy in Discord if people want to go watch there. And it's just. We've got a whole bunch of guests lined up, put a lot of work into this. So it's going to be come and go. We've got Chris Gore is going to be coming by. Mexican Iron Man's going to be there. Tom Connor's going to be there throughout the day. We've got Culture Casino's coming. Paul Chato. A lot of people you guys will know are going to be coming by. But we also want to have you guys who are in the chat who maybe don't really stream. I want you to come on too and tell us your stories about when you saw the films and what they mean to you. And the books, all Tolkien. So that's what
I will say that I'm a huge Tolkien fan, but I'm also Peter Jackson is my personal favorite modern filmmaker. I've read biographies of him. I modeled myself after him as a storyteller. So if I'm able to participate, just depending on the dates and times and what I've got going on, but even if I could come on for a few minutes to share some thoughts on the Two Towers.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
thank you so much, everyone, for coming on. And Cameron, Nicole, you guys have been amazing. You've hung with us all night. Cameron, we brought back. So
I came back because it was too interesting. I'm like sitting there doing work. I'm like, damn it. I'm listening in the background. I'm like, damn it. I got to participate.
Hell yes.
An amazing panel. Well done, guys. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
With that, I will play us out with some Gandalf.
Merry
Enough. I am Gandalf. And Gandalf means me. Gandalf